From the humid jungles of Brazil to the snow-covered peaks of Japan, from the frozen forests of Canada to the sun-baked deserts of the Middle East, humanity has always sought to name the unknown, to give shape to shadows. Tonight, we're exploring the mythical beings that have haunted human imagination for centuries, the spirits that parents invoked to keep children safe, the monsters that embodied cultural values and warnings. Some may be familiar, others completely new, but each carries the weight of generations who believed, who feared, who respected. If this helps you unwind, a like helps others find their way here too. But for now, let's begin. In the heart of Brazil's forests, where the air hangs thick with moisture and the scent of earth mingles with wild orchids, there lives a small figure known as Saci Pererê. This mischievous spirit appears as a young boy with dark skin, wearing a magical red cap called a carapuça, smoking a pipe, and possessing only one leg. The Saci moves through the world in whirlwinds of dust and leaves, those small tornadoes that suddenly appear on rural roads and disappear just as quickly. When horses refuse to move forward, when kitchen pots go missing, when milk curdles unexpectedly or food burns despite careful watching, rural Brazilians know the Saci has passed through. He ties knots in horses' manes during the night, creating tangles that take hours to undo, braids that seem impossible to have formed naturally. The Saci can be captured, it's said, by throwing a sieve over the whirlwind where he dwells, then removing his red cap, which holds his power. Without this cap, he becomes docile, even helpful, though keeping a Saci captive brings its own troubles. His laughter echoes through the forest at dusk, a sound that makes travelers quicken their pace toward home. The legend of Saci Pererê carries roots deep in Brazilian culture, a blending of indigenous Tupi-Guarani traditions with African influences that arrived during the colonial period. In some regions, the Saci appears with his cap in bright red, while in others it's black as night. Some tales describe him with 2 legs but a withered or missing foot, while the most common version insists on his single leg, which he uses to hop with remarkable speed through the undergrowth. He appears most frequently on Mondays and Fridays, during the hours when daylight fades and shadows lengthen between the trees. The Saci fears only 2 things: blessed rosaries and the crossing of running water, which breaks his power and forces him to abandon pursuit of any traveler he's been tormenting. Parents tell their children about the Saci not merely to frighten, but to teach respect for the forest, to explain the unexplainable, to give personality to the wild places where civilization hasn't yet reached. In the whisper of wind through leaves, in the sudden disappearance of a tool left outside, the Saci remains present in rural Brazilian life. Deeper in the Brazilian forest dwells another protector, one whose very appearance defies the natural order. The Curupira stands as guardian of the trees and animals, a figure with flame-red hair that flows like fire, skin the color of copper, and feet that point backward, heel where toes should be and toes where heels belong. These reversed feet serve a purpose beyond the merely strange, for they create tracks that lead travelers in the wrong direction, away from the forest's heart and the Curupira's domain. Hunters who pursue animals with greed rather than need, those who take more than they require or who harm young creatures, find themselves hopelessly lost, walking in circles for days, while the backward footprints promise a path forward that never arrives. The Curupira can mimic human voices perfectly, calling out in the tones of a lost child or an injured companion, luring the cruel deeper into places where vines grow thick and sunlight never reaches the forest floor. Some say the Curupira rides a great peccary, a wild boar of unusual size, crashing through the underbrush in pursuit of those who would harm the forest. The Curupira's methods of protection vary with the transgression. For minor offenses, simple confusion suffices, a day spent walking in circles before the forest finally releases its grip. For those who persist in harming animals or cutting trees without prayer or permission, the Curupira's punishment grows more severe. Hunters report finding their weapons mysteriously broken, their traps sprung and destroyed, their camps scattered as if by a great wind, though the air remained perfectly still. The Curupira sometimes appears to lost children, though, guiding them safely back to clearings they recognize, back to paths that lead home. Indigenous peoples leave offerings for the Curupira, tobacco and cachaça placed at the roots of ancient trees, small gifts to honor the guardian and ask on permission before taking from the forest. In the Amazon and Atlantic rainforest, in the Cerrado and the Pantanal, wherever trees grow thick and wild things thrive, the Curupira walks backward through his domain, eternally vigilant, eternally protective of the green world that diminishes year by year. Through the Brazilian wetlands and along the edges of forests where the land meets water, another creature moves with purpose both beautiful and terrible. The boitata appears as a serpent of immense size, its body composed entirely of fire, or perhaps covered in scales that burn with inner light, eyes that glow like twin flames in the darkness. This fire serpent serves as protector of fields and forests from those who would burn them carelessly, who set fires without thought for what might be destroyed. The boitata's very name comes from the Tupi words for serpent and fire, a combination that captures its essential nature. According to the oldest tellings, the boitata was once an ordinary serpent who survived a great flood by hiding in a cave, emerging to find the world drowned and corpses floating everywhere. The serpent fed on the eyes of the dead, consuming so many that it absorbed their light, their vision, transforming into a being of pure luminescence. Now it glides through the night, a ribbon of flame that winds between trees, that coils around fields, that rises like a pillar of light to terrify those who would set destructive fires. Travelers report seeing the boitata from a distance, a line of fire moving with serpentine grace across the landscape, sometimes mistaken for mysterious lights or will-o-wisps. To look directly into the boitata's burning eyes brings blindness, or madness, or both, the mind unable to process such intensity of light and awareness. The creature appears most often during the dry season, when fires pose the greatest danger to the natural world, when farmers might carelessly burn fields without proper precautions. Some say the boitata can shrink itself to the size of a common snake, hiding in the grass to observe human behavior, only revealing its true burning form when confronting those who threaten its domain. Others claim it grows large enough to encircle entire plantations, a wall of flame that paradoxically protects rather than destroys. Indigenous shamans speak of the boitata with respect, recognizing in this fire serpent the spirit of nature's fury against those who would carelessly damage what has taken centuries to grow. In the flicker of distant fires on the horizon, in the strange lights that dance above marshland, the boitata continues its eternal patrol. Where rivers wind through the Brazilian interior, where water runs deep and clear over smooth stones, another figure waits beneath the surface. The Iara, sometimes called the Mother of Waters, appears as a woman of extraordinary beauty, with long dark or green hair, bronze skin, and the lower body of a fish. She sits on river rocks during twilight hours, combing her hair and singing songs of such beauty that fishermen forget their nets, their families, their very names. Her voice carries across the water like honey mixed with sorrow, like the sound of home after years of wandering, like every beautiful thing a person has ever lost or longed for. Men who hear her singing find themselves walking into the river, drawn by something deeper than desire, deeper than reason, until the water closes over their heads and the Iara takes them down to her realm beneath the waves. Some say she keeps them there as companions in underwater cities of incredible beauty, kingdoms of coral and pearl that exist just beneath the surface of ordinary rivers. Others claim she consumes their essence, feeding on their life force to maintain her immortal beauty. The origins of the Iara tell a darker story, one of injustice and transformation. She was once human, it's said, a warrior woman of incredible skill whose brothers grew jealous of her abilities and her father's favor. They ambushed her one night, intending to end her life, but she proved too skilled even for their numbers, defeating them in combat, though it grieved her deeply to harm her own blood. When her father discovered his sons' deaths, he refused to believe they had attacked first, and he himself pursued his daughter to the river's edge. Wounded and exhausted, she fell into the water, and the fish took pity on her, transforming her body so she might live, though never again on land. Now she lures men to the depths, some say in revenge for her father's betrayal, while others claim she simply grows lonely in her underwater realm and seeks company in the only way she knows. Fishermen leave offerings to the Iara, flowers cast upon the water, tobacco placed on river stones, asking for safe passage and good catches. In the evening, when the light turns golden on the water's surface, her songs still drift from hidden pools. Far to the north, in Mexico's valleys and along its rivers, another weeping figure wanders through the darkness. La Llorona, the weeping woman, drifts in white garments along waterways and through empty streets, her cries of "Ay, mis hijos," carrying on the night air. Her story speaks of a beautiful woman who fell in love with a wealthy man, bore him children, but was eventually abandoned when he chose to marry someone of his own social class. In her grief and rage, the story goes, she took her children to the river, and they were lost to the waters. Realizing what had occurred, she was overcome with horror and sorrow, and she herself passed soon after. But her spirit could not rest, and now she wanders eternally, searching for the children she lost, weeping for them along every body of water, her white form appearing suddenly in the mist that rises from rivers and lakes. Those who encounter La Llorona describe a figure whose beauty has been transformed by endless grief. Her face sometimes lovely, sometimes skeletal, her hands reaching out as if to embrace before becoming like claws. Her wailing grows louder as she approaches, a sound of such pure anguish that it freezes the blood, that makes even the brave run for shelter and light. Parents throughout Mexico and the American Southwest tell their children about La Llorona, warning them to stay away from rivers and canals after dark, to come home before night falls, to never wander alone where water runs. Some say if you hear her cries very close, you are safe. But if her wailing sounds distant, she may be standing right behind you. Others claim that seeing her 3 times means your own death is near, that she serves as a harbinger as well as a mourner. In her tragedy, generations have found a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride, of abandonment, of allowing rage to overcome parental love. Through the centuries, her white figure continues to drift through the darkness, forever searching, forever weeping, forever unable to find peace. In the same regions of Mexico, another type of shapeshifter walks among ordinary people. The Nahual possesses the ability to transform into animal form, most commonly a dog, jaguar, or bird, though some masters of this art can assume multiple shapes. Unlike mere witchcraft, the Nahual tradition runs deep in Mesoamerican culture, connecting back to Aztec and Maya beliefs about the bonds between humans and animal spirits. Every person, according to these ancient teachings, has a corresponding animal spirit born at the same moment, sharing a mystical connection. But some individuals develop the ability to consciously transform, to actually become their animal counterpart, to see through animal eyes and move with animal grace. These Nahualis might use their gifts for protection, for healing, for maintaining balance in their communities. But others employ the transformation for darker purposes, stealing from neighbors under cover of animal form, spreading disease, settling old grudges with attacks that appear to come from wild creatures rather than human enemies. Identifying a Nahual proves difficult, for they appear as ordinary people during daylight hours, betraying their nature only through certain signs that the knowledgeable can recognize. Some say a person's eyes retain a faint glow even in human form, or that they seem more comfortable in the company of animals than people. Others claim that Nahualis cast no shadow at certain times of day, or that dogs become agitated in their presence, sensing the predator beneath human skin. The transformation typically occurs at night, the Nahual removing their clothes and hiding them carefully before the change takes them. If someone finds and steals these hidden garments, the Nahual becomes trapped in animal form until the clothing is returned. In villages throughout southern Mexico and Central America, unexplained animal attacks, cattle dying mysteriously, strange creatures glimpsed in peripheral vision, all might be attributed to a Nahual walking their territory. The tradition persists not merely as superstition but as a living belief system, a way of understanding the permeable boundaries between human and animal, natural and supernatural, the seen world and the one that exists just beneath its surface. Beneath the earth in Mexican folklore, small beings called chaneques guard the forests and natural spaces with fierce dedication. These creatures stand no taller than small children, with dark skin, backward feet like the Brazilian curupira, and a temperament that ranges from mischievous to genuinely dangerous when provoked. The chaneques serve as protectors of nature, particularly of springs, rivers, and ancient trees, punishing those who enter the forest with disrespectful attitudes or intentions to harm. They possess the power to cause travelers to become lost, to create illusions that make familiar paths seem strange, to steal a person's tonal, the spiritual essence that keeps body and soul connected. Someone who has lost their tonal to the chaneques becomes ill, feverish, confused, unable to eat or rest properly. Traditional healers must perform specific rituals to retrieve the stolen essence, sometimes negotiating with the chaneques, sometimes tricking them, always approaching with respect and proper offerings. Children prove particularly vulnerable to chaneque mischief, and parents teach their young ones to ask permission before entering the forest, to behave respectfully around natural water sources, to never urinate near springs or ancient trees. A child who offends the chaneques might be led away into the forest, returned hours or days later with no memory of where they've been, or sometimes changed in subtle ways, quieter, more thoughtful, carrying knowledge they shouldn't possess. The Shaneks particularly despise those who cut trees without prayer, who pollute water sources, who hunt animals for sport rather than need. Such offenders might find themselves walking in circles for days, or attacked by swarms of insects that appear from nowhere, or plagued by accidents and misfortune that follows them even after they leave the forest. Offerings of food, tobacco, and flowers left at the forest's edge can appease the Shaneks, can ask their permission for safe passage or for taking resources from their domain. In the green places that still remain, where springs bubble up from ancient rock and trees grow thick with epiphytes and orchids, the Shaneks continue their watch, tiny guardians of a natural world that shrinks each year. Mexico's waterways hold another danger in the form of the ahuizotl, a creature whose name means spiny aquatic thing in Nahuatl. This beast resembles a dog or otter with sleek fur, but its tail ends in a human-like hand, complete with fingers that can grasp and pull. The ahuizotl lurks in lakes and canals, waiting for people who approach too close to the water's edge, particularly targeting those who fish or wash clothes at the waterside. That hand at the end of its tail shoots out faster than sight can follow, grasping an ankle or wrist, pulling the victim into deep water with strength no ordinary animal could possess. Those taken by the ahuizotl are drowned, and their bodies found days later, bloated and marked, their eyes, teeth, and nails removed. According to Aztec beliefs, those killed by the ahuizotl were claimed by Tlaloc, the rain god, their deaths sacrifices that earned them a place in paradise, a realm of eternal spring and abundance. The ahuizotl served a purpose in Aztec cosmology, a reminder that water gives life but also takes it, that the gods who provide rain and fertility also demand their due. Priests would retrieve bodies marked by the ahuizotl with reverence, understanding that the deceased had been chosen for a sacred purpose. The creature supposedly made a crying sound like a baby or small child, luring the compassionate close to the water where that grasping hand could reach them. In the floating gardens of Xochimilco and along the shores of the ancient lakes that once surrounded Tenochtitlan, the ahuizotl was both feared and respected, a servant of divine will operating in the boundary between earth and water. Even now, in the remaining canals and lakes of central Mexico, old fishermen tell stories of the ahuizotl, warn their grandchildren about standing too close to the water's edge at dusk, and sometimes leave small offerings to Tlaloc, asking that the rain god's servant spare them another day. Moving south to the regions of Argentina and Chile, the dense forests hold a creature known as El Trauco, a figure both grotesque and strangely compelling. This dwarf-like being stands barely 3 feet tall, with a twisted body, stumpy legs, and a face that appears malformed to human eyes. He dresses in crude garments woven from plants and carries a stone hatchet, living in the deepest parts of the forest where ancient trees grow so thick that sunlight barely penetrates to the forest floor. Despite his unfortunate appearance, El Trauco possesses a supernatural power of seduction that affects young women who wander too far from their villages or who linger alone in the forest. His gaze alone can cause a woman to become entranced, to lose her will and reason, to follow him into the depths of the woods. When a young, unmarried woman in these regions becomes pregnant without explanation, the community often attributes it to El Trauco, a cultural explanation that both condemns the forest's dangers and provides a socially acceptable narrative for out-of-wedlock pregnancy. El Trauco cannot survive in sunlight, emerging only during heavy cloud cover or in the deep twilight of the forest where his domain remains perpetually shadowed. He twists and kills trees by simply staring at them, his malevolent power extending to the plant life around him, creating dead zones in otherwise healthy forest. The only protection against El Trauco, according to tradition, involves carrying a branch of maki berry, or placing such branches around a home to ward off his influence. Some say that speaking his name aloud attracts his attention, drawing him toward the speaker, and that women should never venture into the forest alone during menstruation, as this particularly attracts his notice. The tradition of El Trauco serves multiple purposes in Chilean and Argentine culture. It discourages young women from wandering into dangerous forested areas, provides explanation for unexpected pregnancies, and embodies the fear of the wild, untamed places that exist beyond the boundaries of civilization. In the temperate rainforests of southern Chile, where mist clings to ancient trees and the forest floor remains perpetually damp, El Trauco still represents the dangers that lurk where human control ends. The waterways of Chile and Argentina also know La Pincoya, a figure of very different nature from El Trauco, representing beauty and abundance rather than grotesqueness and danger. She appears as a beautiful woman with long blonde or dark hair, sometimes naked, sometimes clothed in seaweed and kelp, dancing on beaches or rocks at the ocean's edge. When La Pincoya dances facing the sea, she brings abundance, drawing fish and shellfish toward the shore, ensuring good catches for fishermen and plenty for coastal communities. But when she turns her back to the ocean and faces the land while dancing, she takes the bounty away, and fish become scarce. Shellfish beds empty, and coastal peoples face hunger and hardship. Fishermen observing La Pincoya's dances try to discern which direction she faces, reading in her movements the fortune or misfortune of the coming season. La Pincoya dwells with her husband Pincoy and her father Milalobo in underwater cities of great beauty, emerging to the surface world to perform her dances that determine the ocean's generosity. She also serves as a guardian of the drowned, gathering the souls of those lost at sea and guiding them to the afterlife, or, in some versions, bringing them to the underwater realm where they live in peace forever. Chilotes, the people of Chiloé Island, hold a particular reverence for La Pincoya, seeing in her the personification of the sea's dual nature, generous provider and ruthless taker. They never speak her name disrespectfully, never fail to thank her when catches are good, and leave small offerings on beaches and rocks where she's been seen dancing. In the dance of waves against rocky shores, in the abundance or scarcity of the sea's gifts, La Pincoya's influence continues, a reminder that nature provides according to its own rhythms, its own mysterious decisions, its own sacred dances performed in the spaces between land and water. In the mountain regions of Peru, a different terror stalks the night in the form of the Pishtaco, a pale-skinned figure who attacks travelers and indigenous people to steal their body fat. This creature represents a uniquely Andean nightmare, born from the collision of indigenous and colonial cultures, embodying fears of white outsiders, of exploitation, of the literal consumption of indigenous bodies for European profit. The Pishtaco appears as a tall white man, sometimes a stranger, sometimes taking the form of a priest or authority figure, carrying a long knife or medical instruments. He approaches victims on lonely roads or enters homes at night, removing body fat through cuts that heal without scarring, or through devices that extract fat through a person's navel or ears, leaving the victim weak, ill, or dead. The legend of the Pishtako connects to historical realities of colonialism, when indigenous peoples were forced to render their own body fat to grease church bells, when bodies were exploited for medical experiments, when the extraction of resources, mineral, agricultural, and human, defined the relationship between colonizer and colonized. In modern iterations, the Pishtako evolves, becoming a doctor in a hospital, an NGO worker, a tourist with suspicious questions and interest in remote communities. The fear remains constant that indigenous bodies will be consumed, literally or metaphorically, to serve outside interests. Parents warn children not to travel alone, not to trust strangers with pale skin and too many questions, not to accept food or drink from unfamiliar sources. In the highlands of Peru, where ancient ways persist despite centuries of pressure to modernize, the Pishtako serves as both folklore and cultural memory, a reminder that threats to indigenous existence have always worn many faces, some of them terrifyingly friendly. The wind that moves through high mountain passes sometimes carries warnings whispered in Quechua, old words about old dangers that never quite disappear. In the frozen forests of North America, where winter lasts longer than memory and hunger becomes a companion more constant than any friend, the Algonquin peoples speak of the Wendigo with voices that drop to whispers. This is not merely a creature but a spiritual corruption, a transformation that occurs when a human being breaks the ultimate taboo and consumes the flesh of their own kind. The Wendigo embodies insatiable hunger, greed that can never be satisfied, desire that grows more ravenous with each attempt to feed it. It appears sometimes as a gaunt, humanoid figure towering above the trees, skin stretched tight over protruding bones, eyes sunken deep in their sockets, lips torn away to reveal teeth that seem too large, too sharp, too eager. Other descriptions paint it as a skeletal giant with a heart of ice, exhaling winter wind, moving through blizzards as if the storm itself has taken malevolent form. The Wendigo grows larger with each person it consumes, yet this growth only increases its hunger, ensuring it can never feel satisfied, never feel full, condemned to eternal starvation despite endless feeding. The Wendigo legend served crucial purposes in Algonquin, Cree, and Ojibwe communities facing the brutal realities of northern winters. When food grew scarce and starvation threatened, the absolute taboo against cannibalism had to be maintained even at the cost of individual lives, for the good of the community's survival and spiritual health. Stories of the Wendigo reinforced this prohibition, teaching that those who consumed human flesh to survive would become something far worse than dead. They would become predators of their own people, forever outcast, forever hungry, forever suffering. The Wendigo hunts during winter months, stalking through forests where snow muffles all sound, where cold numbs extremities and makes thinking difficult, where a person alone can quickly lose their way. It mimics human voices, calling out in the tones of loved ones, luring the lost deeper into the wilderness where no help can reach them. Some traditions speak of the Wendigo possessing people, entering their bodies and slowly transforming them from within, making them grow violent, antisocial, obsessed with meat and feeding. Shamans would identify those possessed early before the transformation completed, attempting rituals of purification or, in extreme cases, ending the person's life before they could fully become the monster. The Wendigo represents more than literal cannibalism. It embodies the spiritual danger of greed, of taking more than one needs, of allowing appetite to override community welfare. In this way, the legend remains relevant beyond its original context, speaking to modern concerns about consumption, about corporations that grow larger yet remain unsatisfied, about systems that feed endlessly on resources and people yet always demand more. The creature's heart of ice symbolizes the coldness that enters a person who places their own survival above all else, who loses their humanity in the pursuit of satisfaction that can never come. In the deep forests of Canada and the northern United States, where winter still rules for months at a time, where wolves howl and trees crack in the cold, old warnings about the Wendigo persist. The wind through bare branches sometimes sounds like breathing, heavy and hungry, and those who know the old stories walk a little faster toward the light of home. The Wendigo's opposite in some ways manifests in the Thunderbird, a creature of power and protection known to many indigenous nations across North America. This immense bird, large enough to darken the sky when it passes overhead, creates thunder with the beating of its wings and lightning from the blinking of its eyes. The Thunderbird serves as a guardian spirit, a force of nature that battles evil spirits and monsters, particularly the underwater panthers and horned serpents that threaten human communities. Different nations describe the Thunderbird with varying details. Some see it as resembling an eagle of extraordinary size, others as a more supernatural entity whose true form transcends simple bird-likeness. The Thunderbird nests on the highest mountains where storm clouds gather, where no human can easily reach, its eggs said to be boulders, and its young requiring entire deer or whales for feeding. When thunderstorms roll across the plains or mountains, elders recognize the Thunderbird's presence in the distinctive sound of thunder, different from ordinary storms, carrying a quality of intentionality and power. The Thunderbird sometimes appears to worthy individuals in visions, granting them power to heal or lead, marking them with symbols that connect them to storm and sky. Warriors who carried Thunderbird symbols on their shields or clothing believed themselves protected in battle, connected to a force greater than any human conflict. The lightning that strikes during storms represents the Thunderbird hunting its enemies or purifying the earth, burning away corruption and evil influence. In some traditions, certain people could call upon the Thunderbird for aid during times of great need, though such summons came with risk. This was a force of nature, not a tame spirit, and it might judge the summoner unworthy or misunderstand human intentions with catastrophic results. The Thunderbird demanded respect, offerings, and proper ceremonial approach, never casual invocation or frivolous request. The relationship between humans and Thunderbird varied by nation and region, but common threads emphasized its role as protector and purifier, a necessary force that could be terrifying but ultimately served the balance between earth and sky, between human communities and the spiritual powers that surrounded them. In the crash of thunder during summer storms, in the sudden violent weather that sweeps across plains and mountains, the Thunderbird continues its eternal patrol, hunting the monsters that would threaten the world below, creating the storms that bring needed rain, maintaining the cosmic order through power that humans can only witness and honor, never control. The sight of clouds building into towering formations, the first distant rumble of approaching thunder. These remain connected in many minds to the beating of immense wings, to eyes that flash with more than reflected light, to a presence that has watched over these lands since time before memory. Moving eastward to the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, a very different creature haunts the sandy soil and stunted trees of this desolate region. The Jersey Devil's birth, according to legend, occurred in 1735 when a woman named Mother Leeds, pregnant with her 13th child, cursed the baby in frustration, crying out that she wished it would be a devil. When the child was born, it initially appeared human, but then transformed before the horrified witnesses. Its face elongated into something like a horse or bat. Wings erupted from its back. Its feet became hooves, and a forked tail lashed behind it. The creature immediately attacked those present in the room, then escaped up the chimney and flew into the surrounding pine barrens, where it has dwelt ever since. Descriptions of the Jersey Devil vary across the centuries, but common elements include a horse-like or goat-like head, bat wings large enough to carry its body through the air, cloven hooves, and a distinctive scream that sounds like nothing else in nature. A cry that freezes the blood of those who hear it echoing through the pine forests at night. The Jersey Devil appears most frequently during times of social stress or approaching disaster, as if its presence heralds coming hardship. Sightings increased dramatically before major wars, during economic depressions, before severe storms or other natural disasters. Witnesses describe encountering the creature on lonely roads through the pine barrens, seeing it perched on rooftops in rural towns, hearing it scream cutting through the darkness, finding unusual tracks in mud or snow, hoof prints that seem too large, placed in patterns no normal animal would create, livestock found dead with strange wounds, unexplained disappearances of pets, mysterious fires or sounds in the night, all might be attributed to the Jersey Devil. In 1909, a wave of sightings swept through southern New Jersey and Philadelphia, with hundreds of people reporting encounters, finding tracks, hearing the creature's cries. Schools closed, workers stayed home. Posees formed to hunt the devil, though none succeeded in capturing or even clearly photographing it. The Jersey Devil serves as New Jersey's most famous cryptid, a source of local pride and tourist interest, but also a genuine part of the cultural landscape for those who live in and around the Pine Barrens. The region itself contributes to the legend's persistence. The Pine Barrens form a vast wilderness area of sandy soil, stunted trees, and winding roads that all look similar, easy to get lost in, populated by few people and home to natural sounds that can seem eerie to the unfamiliar. In this liminal space between New York and Philadelphia, between the settled coast and the deep forest, the Jersey Devil represents the wild that persists despite civilization's encroachment. The reminder that some mysteries resist explanation, some creatures refuse categorization. In the cry of an owl or the scream of a fox, in shadows that move strangely between pine trees, in the feeling of being watched while driving lonely roads at night, the Jersey Devil maintains its presence, New Jersey's own contribution to the bestiary of American monsters. Further north, in the mountains of West Virginia, another creature emerged into public consciousness during the 1960s, though its appearances may stretch back further into the region's history. The Mothman stands roughly human height, but appears far from human, a gray or brown humanoid figure with massive wings folded against its back and, most distinctively, large red eyes that glow with internal light, hypnotic and terrifying to those who witness them directly. The Mothman typically appears as a harbinger, its sightings concentrated in the months leading up to the collapse of the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, in December 1967. This disaster claimed 46 lives when the bridge suddenly failed during rush hour, sending vehicles and their occupants into the icy Ohio River below. In the 13 months before this tragedy, numerous residents of Point Pleasant and surrounding areas reported encounters with the winged figure, seeing it standing on the bridge itself, perched on buildings, flying above cars on rural roads, always with those terrible, glowing red eyes. Witnesses described being paralyzed by the Mothman's gaze, feeling a sense of dread or impending doom that persisted for days after the encounter, experiencing headaches and nightmares. Some reported that the creature seemed to communicate telepathically, flooding their minds with images or feelings they couldn't quite interpret or later articulate. The Mothman could fly at tremendous speeds, easily keeping pace with cars traveling 60 or 70 miles per hour. Its wings, beating silently or creating a sound described as mechanical, nothing like a bird's natural wing beat. After the Silver Bridge collapse, Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant decreased dramatically, though reports have continued sporadically in various locations, often preceding other disasters or tragic events. Some investigators suggest the Mothman represents a supernatural warning system, appearing to alert communities to coming danger, though the warnings remain too cryptic for people to understand or act upon. The Mothman phenomenon extends beyond simple creature sighting into high strangeness territory. Witnesses also reported men in black cars asking strange questions, mysterious phone calls, electronic disturbances, and other paranormal events clustering around the same time period as the Mothman encounters. This has led to theories connecting the creature to UFO activity, to interdimensional beings, to government experiments, to almost anything mysterious or unexplained. But at its core, the Mothman remains a regional legend of West Virginia, a figure that represents the anxiety of small-town life, the fear of disasters both natural and man-made, the sense that something vast and incomprehensible watches from the darkness, trying perhaps to warn us but unable to communicate in ways we can understand. In Point Pleasant, a statue of the Mothman stands as tourist attraction and memorial. Those glowing red eyes rendered in metal and glass, forever watching, forever warning, forever silent about the disasters it heralds but cannot prevent. The southwestern United States and Puerto Rico know a more recent arrival to the cryptid menagerie, a creature first reported in 1995, but quickly spreading through Latino communities and beyond. The chupacabra, whose name literally means goat sucker, appears in descriptions that vary wildly depending on location and witness. The original Puerto Rican version describes a creature standing 4 to 5 feet tall, with gray skin, large black eyes, spines or quills running down its back, powerful hind legs, and small arms with claws. This version moves with a hopping or leaping gait, can jump tremendous distances, and leaves behind a distinctive calling card. Livestock, particularly goats, found dead and drained of blood, with small puncture marks on their necks or bodies. The attacks seemed surgical, precise, the animals showing no signs of struggle, the blood somehow removed completely without massive spillage at the scene. As chupacabra reports spread to Mexico, Texas, and other areas of the southwestern United States, descriptions began to shift. The North American chupacabra appears more dog-like, hairless or nearly so, with grayish-blue skin, pronounced spine ridge, and a generally canine appearance aside from the lack of fur. Skeptics suggest these creatures are actually coyotes, or dogs suffering from severe mange, a parasitic skin disease that causes hair loss and behavioral changes. Yet witnesses insist what they saw moved differently from any dog, showed intelligence beyond animal cunning, and left livestock casualties that didn't match ordinary predation patterns. The chupacabra seems to appear during times of economic stress, of immigration anxiety, of cultural tension between Latino communities and broader American society, suggesting that, like many monster legends, it serves purposes beyond simple creature sighting, embodying fears about survival, about threats to livelihood, about the vulnerability of those already marginalized. The chupacabra spread through popular culture with remarkable speed, becoming a pan-Latino legend within a few years, appearing in communities from Puerto Rico to Chile, from Mexico to Nicaragua. Each region adapts the creature to local concerns and contexts, but the core remains consistent. Something that attacks livestock, something that doesn't quite match known animals, something that appears suddenly and then vanishes just as mysteriously. The chupacabra represents modern folklore in action, a legend spreading not through centuries of oral tradition but through news media, internet forums, and cultural networks, evolving in real time as each new sighting adds details or contradicts previous descriptions. In the deserts and farmlands of the Southwest, where livestock represents both livelihood and cultural tradition, where ranchers wake to find goats dead in their pens, drained and strange, the chupacabra maintains its hold on imagination and fear. Whether mangy coyote or genuine unknown predator, it serves its purpose in folklore's economy, giving shape to anxieties, providing explanation for disturbing events, reminding us that even in the modern world, mysteries persist just beyond the light of our understanding. The Great Lakes region and northern forests of North America harbor stories of the Wendigo, a creature related to but distinct from the Wendigo, sometimes confused in retellings. The Wendigo appears as a massive humanoid made of ice and stone, standing 20 feet tall or more, with skin like frozen meat, eyes like ice chips, and breath that brings frostbite. Unlike the Wendigo, which represents the corruption of cannibalism, the Wendigo serves more as a force of winter itself, the embodiment of the season's killing cold and the starvation it brings. The creature wanders through blizzards, sometimes causing them, seeking isolated cabins or lost travelers to freeze and consume. Its mere presence drops the temperature dramatically, causing fires to gutter and die, making breath crystallize in the air, freezing water in containers and pipes. The Wendigo moves silently despite its size, appearing suddenly in the midst of storms, or discovered standing motionless outside a cabin window, peering in with those terrible frozen eyes. According to Ojibwe tradition, the Wendigo was once human, a person who became lost in winter storms, or who committed terrible acts during times of starvation there, humanity freezing away until only hunger and cold remained. The transformation leaves them enormous, impossible to satisfy, forever seeking the warmth of living things to consume, though consuming never brings warmth back to their frozen hearts. The Wendigo can be harmed only by fire or weapons heated red hot, as ordinary blades and bullets pass through its icy flesh without effect. Communities facing Wendigo threats would heat axes and spear points, prepare torches, try to drive the creature back into the wilderness, or, if possible, melt it entirely, reducing it to a pool of foul-smelling water that steams in the cold air. Some stories tell of people possessed by Wendigo spirits, showing the same signs as Wendigo possession: growing obsession with meat, increasing violence, isolation from community, developing a strange smell like decay and ice. The Wendigo serves as warning against isolation, against traveling alone in winter, against allowing oneself to become separated from community and warmth during the dangerous months. It represents the very real danger of hypothermia, of getting lost in storms, of starving when supply lines fail and hunting proves unsuccessful. In giving these dangers a face and a name, a physical form that can be fought or fled, traditional stories made the abstract threats of winter concrete and addressable. The Wendigo walks when the first serious snows arrive, when temperatures drop below what humans can safely tolerate for long, when the forest becomes a white maze where every direction looks the same. In the howl of winter wind, in the cracking of ice on lakes, in the silence that follows snowfall when the world seems held in frozen suspension, the Wendigo maintains its vigil, winter's hunger given form and purpose. The Inuit peoples of the Arctic regions speak of the Kalupiluit, creatures that dwell beneath the sea ice, waiting for children who wander too close to the water's edge or play on ice that hasn't frozen thick and solid. These beings appear as humanoid creatures with long hair like seaweed, greenish skin, and long fingernails that can pierce through clothing and flesh. They wear a mautiat, traditional Inuit parkas, often with large pouches designed for carrying babies. Except the Kalupiluit use these pouches to carry away the children they steal. The creatures lurk just beneath the ice, able to see up through it to the surface, watching for vulnerable targets. When a child approaches too close, the Kalupiluit burst through thin ice or grab at the edge of thicker ice, pulling their victims down into the freezing water before anyone can intervene. The stolen children join the Kalupiluit beneath the ice, some say as servants or companions, others claim as food. Still others suggest transformed into Kalupiluit themselves. Parents tell their children about the Kalupiluit to keep them safe from very real dangers. Thin ice that can give way suddenly. Water so cold it brings unconsciousness within minutes. Currents beneath the ice that can pull a person away from holes or leads where they might escape. The Arctic environment offers little room for error, particularly for children who might not yet understand the dangers they face. The Kalupiluit legend provides a memorable, fear-inducing reason to stay away from dangerous ice, to listen when adults say an area isn't safe, to respect the sea's power even when it appears frozen and solid. The creature's long fingernails represent the cold itself, the way frostbite feels like claws digging into exposed skin. Their green skin and seaweed hair evoke the appearance of things pulled from the water, the strange color drowned things take on, the way seaweed tangles around anything that falls into the sea. The Kalupiluit appear most actively during the transition seasons, when ice forms but hasn't yet grown thick enough for safety, or when spring brings melting and unpredictable weak spots. These times of change present the most danger, when the familiar landscape of winter begins transforming into something less stable, when assumptions about ice thickness or strength prove suddenly fatally wrong. In the sounds of ice cracking and shifting, in the appearance of leads opening in previously solid ice, in the mist that rises from cracks where water meets freezing air, the Kalupiluit maintain their presence. They serve as embodiment of the sea's danger, of cold water's quick lethality, of the way the Arctic environment can shift from beautiful to deadly in the space between one step and the next. Children who learn to fear the Kalupiluit learn to respect ice, to stay away from uncertain areas, to prioritize safety over curiosity. Lessons that can mean the difference between life and death in the far north. The skinwalker exists in Navajo tradition as a subject so serious, so dangerous to discuss, that bringing it up unnecessarily is itself considered dangerous and disrespectful. These are not creatures, but people. Witches who have gained the ability to transform into animals, particularly coyotes, wolves, foxes, or owls, by committing the worst possible acts against their own people. The Navajo word is Ye-nal-lushi, meaning something like, with it, he goes on all fours. Creating a skinwalker involves killing a close blood relative, an act so fundamentally opposed to Navajo values of kinship and harmony that it places the perpetrator outside the bounds of humanity. Once transformed, skinwalkers use their powers for evil purposes, cursing enemies, spreading sickness, causing accidents, attacking the vulnerable. They wear the pelts of animals to facilitate transformation, and in animal form they possess speed, strength, and senses far beyond normal creatures, along with human intelligence and malevolent purpose. Discussing skinwalkers in detail, sharing their stories outside the appropriate cultural context, even speaking the name unnecessarily, all risk drawing their attention or showing disrespect to traditions that should remain within the Navajo community. The very act of talking about them can mark a person as a target or as someone who doesn't understand proper boundaries between public and private knowledge. What can be said is that skinwalkers represent the dark possibility within any tradition of power and medicine, that someone might turn healing knowledge toward harm, protective power toward destruction, community connection toward individual malevolence. They embody the betrayal of everything a society holds sacred, the inversion of proper relationship between humans and nature, between the living and the spiritual world. The skinwalker tradition serves as serious warning within Navajo culture about the consequences of violating kinship bonds, of seeking power through forbidden means, of allowing jealousy or hatred to overcome community obligation. These are not entertaining campfire stories, but genuine beliefs about real dangers, spiritual threats that require proper ritual knowledge to address and combat. The tradition remains closed, meaning that outsiders should not pry into details, should not appropriate the stories for entertainment, should not treat as fictional what communities understand as actual spiritual danger. In the deserts and mesas of the Southwest, where Navajo tradition maintains its strength despite centuries of external pressure, the skinwalker remains a subject approached with utmost seriousness, spoken of only when necessary, protected from casual curiosity or exploitation. Respecting this boundary, this privacy, forms part of respecting indigenous sovereignty and the right of communities to determine what knowledge stays within their keeping and what can be shared with the wider world. Moving to the swamplands of Louisiana and the broader Gulf Coast, stories emerge of the rougarou, the Cajun werewolf whose legend blends French, African, and Native American influences into something unique to the region. The rougarou appears as a creature with a human body and the head of a wolf or dog, standing upright on two legs, covered in hair, with claws and fangs capable of tearing through flesh with terrible ease. The creature stalks through bayous and swamps, particularly during Lent, the 40 days before Easter, when Catholics traditionally practice fasting and sacrifice. Those who break Lenten vows risk transformation into the rougarou for a period of 1 days, cursed to hunt through the darkness, to attack livestock and potentially people, to exist in a state between human and animal. The curse can be transferred. If someone draws blood from the rougarou, the creature becomes human again, but the person who wounded it inherits the curse for the remaining duration. The rougarou serves multiple purposes in Cajun culture, encouraging adherence to religious practice, particularly among children who might otherwise treat Lenten sacrifices casually, keeping people close to home after dark when swamps present genuine dangers from alligators, venomous snakes, and difficult terrain, and maintaining community cohesion through shared belief and practice. The creature particularly targets children who misbehave, who lie to their parents, who refuse to follow Catholic teachings, transforming them as punishment for their disobedience. Parents invoke the rougarou with the same certainty other cultures use the bogeyman, a figure of consequence that makes rules and warnings carry weight beyond mere parental preference. In the swamps, where Spanish moss hangs from cypress trees and water reflects moonlight in confusing patterns, where sounds carry strangely and familiar paths can become mazes in darkness, the rougarou finds perfect territory. The rougarou legend adapts to each generation while maintaining core elements: the connection to Catholicism, the werewolf-like transformation, the swamp setting, the possibility of passing the curse to others. Modern versions sometimes disconnect from specifically Lenten timing, expanding to any vow-breaking or moral failing serious enough to merit supernatural punishment. The creature appears in local festivals, stories, even commercial branding, showing how folklore adapts to contemporary contexts while maintaining its essential character. In the darkness of Louisiana bayous, where civilization thins to narrow strips along waterways and vast swamps remain largely untouched by development, where Spanish moss drips from ancient trees and water moccasins sun themselves on half-submerged logs. The rougarou continues its existence in the liminal space between belief and skepticism, between genuine warning and entertaining story, between the old ways and the new world that hasn't quite erased them. In the snow-covered mountains of Japan, where winter storms descend with sudden ferocity and travelers can lose their way between one breath and the next, a woman walks through the blizzard wearing only a white kimono. Yuki Onna, the snow woman, appears as a figure of ethereal beauty, her skin pale as fresh snow, her hair long and black as a winter night, her eyes sometimes described as kind, sometimes as empty as ice. She drifts through snowstorms without leaving footprints, her breath bringing frost that can freeze a person solid in moments, her touch draining warmth from any living thing. Yuki Onna appears most often to travelers caught in blizzards, to woodcutters working alone in winter forests, to those who have ventured too far from shelter when the snows begin. Some tales describe her as purely malevolent, freezing anyone she encounters without mercy or hesitation. Other versions paint her as more complex, capable of showing compassion to those who demonstrate kindness, courage, or some quality that touches whatever remains of her humanity. The most famous story of Yuki Onna tells of two woodcutters, master and apprentice, trapped by a sudden storm in a small shelter. During the night, the apprentice wakes to see a beautiful woman in white bending over his master, breathing upon him until he freezes solid. She turns to the young man, but rather than killing him, she spares his life, moved by his youth and beauty, warning him never to speak of what he has witnessed. Years later, the woodcutter marries a beautiful woman who appeared in his village one winter, and they live happily with children for many years, until one night, reminded of the incident by falling snow, he breaks his promise and tells his wife the story. She reveals herself as the Yuki Onna, explains that only her love for him and their children prevents her from taking his life for breaking his vow, then vanishes into the winter night, never to be seen again. This tale captures the dual nature of Yuki Onna, both deadly and capable of love, both monster and woman, both the killing cold of winter and the beauty of fresh snow. Yuki Onna serves as a personification of winter's danger in mountainous Japan, where storms can strand travelers, where hypothermia claims lives with quiet efficiency, where the beauty of snow-covered landscapes conceals lethal cold. The white kimono represents funeral garments, suggesting death's presence in the winter landscape. Her ability to spare those who show her respect or who possess some admirable quality reflects the Japanese cultural emphasis on proper behavior, on the importance of character even in desperate circumstances. Different regions of Japan tell varying versions of the Yuki Onna legend. In some areas, she specifically targets men. In others, she appears as a mother figure searching for lost children. In still others, she serves as guardian of the mountains, punishing those who show disrespect to nature. The common thread remains her association with snow, with cold, with the boundary between life and death that winter weather makes so permeable. In the howling of winter wind through mountain passes, in the sudden whiteout conditions that make navigation impossible, in the deadly beauty of ice crystals forming intricate patterns, Yuki Onna persists as reminder that winter must be respected, that beauty and danger often wear the same face. In Japan's rivers and ponds, a very different creature makes its home, one less ethereal and more mischievous in nature. The kappa appears as a reptilian humanoid, standing about the height of a child, with green or blue-green skin, webbed hands and feet, a turtle-like shell on its back, and, most distinctively, a shallow depression on top of its head that holds water. This water-filled cavity, called the Sara, contains the kappa's power. As long as it remains full, the creature possesses supernatural strength and abilities. But if the water spills, the kappa becomes weak and helpless, sometimes even dying if the depression dries completely. Kappa inhabit rivers, ponds, and other freshwater bodies throughout Japan, dwelling in underwater caves or riverbank burrows, emerging to interact with the surface world in ways both helpful and harmful. These creatures love cucumbers above all other foods, a preference so strong that people leave cucumber offerings to appease kappa and gain safe passage across their territory. The vegetables are sometimes inscribed with the names of family members, a gift to the kappa in exchange for protection. Kappa demonstrate intelligence comparable to humans, speaking Japanese, understanding social customs, and even engaging in sumo wrestling challenges with those brave or foolish enough to accept. They show particular interest in certain human organs, especially the shirikodama, a mythical ball supposedly located in the anus, which kappa attempt to extract from swimmers or those who venture too close to water's edge. This rather undignified aspect of kappa lore served practical purposes, frightening children away from dangerous water, teaching them not to swim in unfamiliar places, warning about the very real risks of drowning in rivers and irrigation channels. The kappa's love of politeness and proper behavior provides a method for escaping their clutches. If you bow deeply to a kappa, it will feel obligated to return the bow, and in doing so will spill the water from its head cavity, weakening it enough to allow escape. This detail teaches children the value of courtesy even in dangerous situations, showing how proper behavior can save one's life. Kappa serve roles beyond simple monster. They sometimes befriend humans who treat them with respect, share knowledge of bone setting and medicine with those who earn their trust, and even help with farm irrigation in exchange for offerings of cucumbers and sake. Stories tell of Kappa who fell in love with human women, who kept promises made to people who saved their lives, who demonstrated honor and loyalty once bond of friendship had been established. The Kappa embodies the dual nature of water itself in Japanese culture, life-giving and essential, but also dangerous, capable of drowning, flooding, destroying. Rivers that provide irrigation for rice paddies also claim lives through accidents and drownings. The Kappa gives this danger a face that is both frightening and somehow approachable, a creature that can be negotiated with, appeased through offerings, even befriended if treated properly. In rural Japan, signs near dangerous waterways still sometimes warn of Kappa, blending folklore with practical safety messaging, keeping the tradition alive while serving modern purposes. The creature remains beloved in Japanese popular culture, appearing in everything from children's cartoons to serious literature. Its image softened in some contexts, but retaining always that essential quality: respect the water or face the consequences. The mountains and forests of Japan harbor the Tengu, supernatural creatures that exist somewhere between gods and demons, protectors and tricksters. Traditional Tengu appear with bird-like features, long noses or beaks, sometimes wings, often depicted wearing the clothing of Yamabushi, the mountain ascetics who practice Shugendo Buddhism. These creatures possess tremendous martial skill, supernatural powers including the ability to fly, to shapeshift, to control wind, and to move between the physical and spiritual worlds with ease. Tengu dwell in mountainous regions, particularly in old-growth forests where massive trees have stood for centuries, creating domains both beautiful and dangerous for humans who venture into their territory. They serve as guardians of the mountains, punishing those who show disrespect to nature, who cut trees without proper ritual acknowledgement, who disturb the forest's peace with excessive noise or violence. The Tengu's long nose represents pride and arrogance, their fallen nature as beings who possessed great power but allowed ego to corrupt them. Tengu demonstrate complex relationships with humans, sometimes appearing as antagonists who kidnap people or lead travelers astray. Other times serving as teachers who impart martial knowledge and spiritual wisdom to worthy students. Many legendary swordsmen in Japanese history claimed to have learned their skills from Tengu masters, spending time in the mountains training with these supernatural beings before returning to human society with abilities beyond normal achievement. The Tengu test those who enter their domains, creating illusions, presenting challenges, observing how humans respond to difficulty, temptation, fear. Those who demonstrate humility, respect, and proper spirit might receive teachings or safe passage. Those who show arrogance, greed, or disrespect face punishment, ranging from simple confusion to serious harm. The greatest Tengu leaders, called Dai Tengu, command respect even from other supernatural beings, serving as kings of their mountain domains, maintaining order among the lesser Tengu and other creatures under their authority. The Tengu's dual nature reflects Buddhist concepts about the dangers of pride and the possibility of redemption. These beings supposedly arise from the spirits of arrogant people, particularly priests or warriors who became too proud of their abilities, who placed ego above enlightenment. Condemned to exist as Tengu, they retain their power but lose their human form and their connection to human society. Some stories suggest that Tengu can eventually achieve enlightenment and escape their cursed state. but most remain trapped by the same pride that created them, unable to humble themselves sufficiently for transformation. The Tengu serve as warning about the spiritual dangers of arrogance, while also embodying the wild power of mountains, the sense that something old and powerful dwells in places where humans rarely venture. In the rustle of wind through high branches, in the sudden gusts that sweep mountain paths, in the eerie silence of ancient forests where even birds seem to pause their songs, the Tengu maintain their watch, teaching or tormenting as they judge appropriate, forever balanced between demon and deity. The Kitsune, foxes of supernatural power and intelligence, occupy a special place in Japanese folklore, appearing as beings of great complexity capable of serving as messengers of the Inari deity, as tricksters who deceive humans for amusement, or as lovers who take human form to experience mortal life. Kitsune grow more powerful and wise as they age, developing additional tails to mark their advancement. Young Kitsune possess only one tail, but the oldest and most powerful can have up to 9. A Kyubi no Kitsune, whose abilities approach those of minor deities. These fox spirits master the art of shape-shifting, most commonly assuming the form of beautiful women, though they can take on any human appearance or even transform into inanimate objects. A kitsune in human form can be identified through various tells: a shadow that shows their true fox shape, the appearance of a tail in moments of distraction or strong emotion, an inability to hide their reflection in water or mirrors, a persistent fox-like quality in their eyes despite otherwise perfect transformation. Kitsune demonstrate the full range of moral possibility, from purely malevolent creatures who delight in causing chaos and suffering, to benevolent guardian spirits who bring prosperity and protection to households and communities. White kitsune, particularly those associated with Inari shrines, serve as messengers of the rice deity, bringing good fortune to farmers, protecting stored grain from rats and other pests, blessing businesses and families who show proper reverence. These divine foxes respond to offerings of fried tofu, their favorite food, left at shrine entrances along with prayers for prosperity. Dark kitsune, wild foxes unconnected to Inari, pursue their own agendas, sometimes taking human lovers and living with them for years before their true nature is revealed, sometimes playing elaborate tricks that leave victims confused or impoverished, sometimes exacting revenge on those who harmed foxes or showed disrespect to their kind. Stories of kitsune wives appear throughout Japanese folklore. A man encounters a beautiful woman, marries her, lives happily for years, often having children, until something reveals her true nature. Perhaps he glimpses her reflection showing fox form, or finds her in her true shape sleeping beside him, or a dog's barking breaks whatever spell concealed her nature. The revelation typically leads to the kitsune's departure, though she often leaves behind blessings for her husband and children, or returns occasionally to watch over them from a distance. These tales explore themes of identity, deception, the masks people wear in relationships, the fear of discovering that someone you love harbors secret nature you never suspected. The kitsune represents the boundary between human and animal, between the civilized and wild, between the knowable and mysterious. In their shape-shifting, they demonstrate that appearances deceive, that beauty and danger intertwine, that wisdom comes from unexpected sources. Foxes glimpsed at dawn or dusk, creatures moving through torii gates at shrine entrances, mysterious fires floating in darkness called kitsunebi or foxfire, All these remind of the kitsune's continuing presence, their watchful intelligence, their complex relationship with human society. In abandoned houses and dark corners of Japan's traditional architecture, the Joragumo waits with patience that spans decades. This creature appears as a beautiful woman, elegant and cultured, skilled in arts and conversation, but her true form reveals a giant spider capable of spinning webs strong enough to trap human prey. The name Jorogumo combines characters meaning binding bride or entangling newlywed woman, capturing the creature's hunting method and its tendency to take female human form. Jorogumo, dwelling in a location for 400 years, gains the power to shapeshift, to speak human language, to create illusions that hide her true appearance and her web-filled lair. She lures men with beauty and apparent vulnerability, sometimes appearing as a woman in distress holding a baby, appealing to masculine protective instincts. When the victim approaches close enough, the Joragumo reveals her true form, binding him in webs too strong to break, keeping him alive in her lair for feeding at her leisure. The Joragumo demonstrates intelligence in her hunting, learning human behavior, adapting her lures to what will most effectively attract specific targets. She might appear as a beautiful woman playing a biwa in a waterfall's mist, her music drawing listeners closer. She might transform into a young bride, lost and frightened, seeking help finding her way home. She might simply present herself as an attractive woman interested in masculine company, luring the unwary to her dwelling where webs wait in shadows and exits prove impossible to find. Some stories suggest the Joragumo can control other, smaller spiders, commanding them to create elaborate illusions or to attack in swarms anyone who threatens her. The baby she sometimes carries actually consists of spider eggs wrapped in webbing, which hatch into hundreds of young spiders if threatened, overwhelming any attacker with sheer numbers. The Joragumo legend draws on real Japanese spiders, particularly the Joro spider, a large orb weaver with striking coloration whose webs can span impressive distances and whose size can startle those unfamiliar with the species. The folklore amplifies natural characteristics into supernatural threat, transforming a harmless if impressive spider into a shape-shifting predator. The Joragumo serves as warning about appearances, about the dangers of lust and vanity, about being lured by surface beauty without investigating deeper. The beautiful woman who turns out to be a monster appears in many cultures' folklore, but the Joragumo's specific nature, her patience, her web spinning, her tendency to keep victims alive and trapped rather than killing immediately, adds distinctly Japanese elements to the archetype. In old houses scheduled for demolition, in abandoned temples where webs grow thick in corners, in the shadows of waterfalls where mist obscures clear vision, the Joragumo supposedly waits still, ready to adapt her hunting methods to each new generation, her 400-year-old intelligence more than sufficient to understand modern prey. The Rokurokubi appears as an ordinary human during daylight hours, often unaware of their own supernatural nature. But when night falls, their neck stretches to impossible lengths, their head detaching to float freely or extending on a serpentine neck to peer in windows, to spy on neighbors, to drink lamp oil or blood. Some Rokurokubi retain their human head, which simply extends on an elongating neck, while others, called Nukakubi, completely separate head from body, the head flying freely through darkness while the body remains sleeping wherever they laid down. These creatures often appear as women, though male Rokurokubi exist in some stories, their condition sometimes presented as a curse for past misdeeds, sometimes as an inherited trait passed through family lines, sometimes as supernatural affliction with no clear origin. The Rokurokubi themselves may not know their nature, living ordinary lives, confused by morning exhaustion and vague, unsettling dreams, unaware that their head wandered the night while their consciousness slept. Discovery of Rokurokubi nature typically occurs by accident. A spouse waking in the night to find their partner's body beside them but head missing, or seeing a familiar face peering in through a second-story window from outside. The Rokurokubi's nighttime activities range from harmless curiosity to malicious behavior, depending on the specific creature and story. Some merely wander, experiencing the freedom of flight or extended reach, observing the world from their unusual perspective without causing harm. Others use their condition to spy on others, stealing secrets, observing intimate moments that should remain private. The most malevolent Rokurokubi attack sleeping people, drinking their blood or lamp oil, sometimes biting with teeth that grow sharp in the darkness, sometimes merely frightening victims with their grotesque appearance. Those who marry or live with Rokurokubi face difficult choices upon discovering the truth. Some accept the supernatural spouse, others flee in horror. Still others attempt to break the curse through various rituals and prayers. The Rokurokubi condition supposedly results from specific transgressions in current or past lives: lying habitually, breaking religious vows, consuming alcohol excessively, failing to honor parents or ancestors. The curse serves as punishment and warning, transforming the transgressor into something that must hide its nature, that becomes literally two-faced, whose true self emerges only in darkness. The separation of head from body symbolizes the disconnect between public presentation and private reality, between the face shown to society and the truth of inner nature. The Rokurokubi cannot easily escape their curse, condemned to this dual existence until they achieve sufficient spiritual purification or until the curse naturally expires after a set period, assuming their condition has specific cause rather than being inherent to their nature. In the darkness of traditional Japanese homes, where sliding doors and paper screens provide little barrier against determined intrusion, where neighbors live close enough to hear conversations through walls, the fear of Rokurokubi spoke to anxieties about privacy, about hidden nature, about discovering that someone familiar harbors monstrous qualities they successfully conceal by day. The Gashadokuro manifests as a giant skeleton formed from the bones of people who died in battle, or from starvation, their unquiet spirits fusing into a single enormous vengeful entity. This yokai stands 15 times the height of a normal person, its bones yellowed and ancient, its empty eye sockets burning with spectral fire, its teeth chattering with a sound like gachi-gachi that gives the creature its name. The Gashadokuro appears at night, particularly during the hours between midnight and dawn, when the boundary between living world and spirit realm grows thin, wandering roads and battlefields where many died, seeking victims to grab and bite, crushing them in skeletal hands or biting off their heads with massive jaws. The creature's approach can sometimes be detected by a ringing sound in the ears, a warning that allows the wise to hide or flee before the Gashadokuro comes into view. Once seen, however, escape proves nearly impossible. The creature's size allows it to cover ground with tremendous speed, and its supernatural nature grants it strength far beyond what bones alone could possess. The Gashadokuro arises specifically from the bones of those who died unburied, unmourned. their deaths unacknowledged by proper funeral rites. Soldiers abandoned on battlefields, civilians who starved during famines while the wealthy feasted, victims of plague or disaster buried in mass graves without individual ceremony. All these might contribute bones and rage to a Gashadakuro's formation. The creature cannot be killed through physical means, as it is already dead, already bone, already beyond ordinary harm. Only time can destroy it, the rage and hunger that animates the skeleton gradually fading as the spirits finally find peace or simply exhaust their anger. Until then, the Gashadokuro stalks the night, an embodiment of societal failure to honor the dead, of the consequences when those who die in tragedy or injustice receive no acknowledgement, no proper ritual transition to the afterlife. The Gashadokuro serves as reminder of obligations to the dead, of the importance of funeral rites in Japanese Buddhist and Shinto practice, of the danger posed by vengeful spirits who feel abandoned by the living. The creature particularly represents the collective rage of those who died in large numbers during wars or famines, events that produce too many bodies for individual attention, that overwhelm community's ability to provide proper burial and mourning for each deceased person. In this way, the Gashadokuro embodies historical trauma, the way mass death creates wounds in the collective consciousness that persist long after the events themselves have passed. The giant skeleton, stalking through darkness, seeking to grab and crush the living, expresses rage at being forgotten, at dying anonymously in circumstances that robbed death of dignity and meaning. In rural Japan, particularly in areas that experienced historical battles or famines, the Gashadokuro remains a feared presence, a reason to avoid certain areas at night, to perform proper rites for the dead no matter how many there might be, to remember that neglect of the deceased creates dangers for the living. The Nurikabe appears as a living wall that manifests on dark roads, blocking travelers' paths with invisible but impassable barrier. This yokai takes the form of a large wall, sometimes visible, sometimes completely invisible, that prevents forward progress no matter which way the traveler turns. Those encountering Nurikabe find themselves walking into what feels like solid wall, where their eyes see only empty road, or they may perceive the wall directly, a massive barrier of stone or plaster that wasn't there moments before. The Nurikabe extends to block any attempt to go around it, growing longer as the traveler walks to the side, maintaining its blockade until the person either gives up and turns back or discovers the trick to bypassing it. Different traditions offer varying methods for defeating Nurikabe. Some say striking the wall at ground level near its bottom will make it vanish. Others claim one must simply wait patiently, and the wall will eventually disappear on its own. Still others suggest the wall can be overcome by attacking it with a stick near what would be its feet if it had any. The Nurikabe demonstrates the yokai tendency toward mischief rather than malevolence, annoying rather than harming those who encounter it. The creature seems motivated by simple desire to obstruct and confuse, offering no deeper malice, taking no pleasure in causing serious harm. Once bypassed or dispersed, the Nurikabe typically doesn't pursue or seek revenge, simply ceasing to exist or moving on to block someone else's path. This relatively benign nature makes it almost playful compared to more dangerous yokai, a trickster that causes frustration and delay, but rarely anything worse. The Nurikabe serves practical purposes in folklore, explaining why travelers sometimes become disoriented on familiar roads, providing excuse for being late when journeying at night, warning people to stay home after dark, rather than risk encountering obstacles, both natural and supernatural. The living wall also represents the way familiar spaces can become strange in darkness, how roads walked confidently by day transform into confusing mazes when the sun sets and shadows grow long. The Nurikabe manifests the disorientation of nighttime travel before modern lighting, when a wrong turn or moment of confusion could lead to being lost for hours, when the mind plays tricks and makes travelers uncertain of paths they know well. In giving this experience a name and form, in making it a creature that can be overcome through specific actions or simple patience, the Nurikabe legend transforms frightening disorientation into something manageable, something with rules and solutions. The wall that blocks progress but cannot truly trap, that frustrates but doesn't harm, represents obstacles that seem insurmountable in the moment, but prove temporary with right approach or sufficient patience. In the rural darkness of Japan, where streetlights remain rare and roads wind between rice paddies and forests, the Nurikabe supposedly still manifests, still blocks paths, still tests the patience of those who travel after sunset. The Kasa Obaki represents one of the Tsukumogami, objects that gain sentience and supernatural powers after existing for 100 years. This particular creature manifests from an old, worn umbrella that develops a single large eye, a long tongue, and one or two legs emerging from its handle. The Kasa Obaki hops through rainy nights on its single leg, or walks on its two, its umbrella canopy serving as head and body, its eye blinking away raindrops, its tongue lolling out in what might be expression of simple joy at continued existence or perhaps mockery of humans who discarded it. The Kasa Obaki rarely causes serious harm, content to startle those who encounter it, to hop alongside travelers during rainstorms, to demonstrate its unlikely existence to the living world. Some accounts describe Kasa Obake as mischievous but harmless, following people briefly before hopping away into darkness. Others suggest the creature harbors resentment at being abandoned or replaced, expressing this through minor acts of harassment, knocking over other umbrellas, appearing suddenly in front of travelers to frighten them, making disturbing sounds in the night. The concept of Tsukumogami reflects Japanese cultural values about the proper treatment of objects, the idea that items used for many years develop spirits or consciousness, that tools and possessions deserve respect and proper disposal rather than casual discarding. An umbrella that served its owner faithfully through 100 years of rainstorms, that protected them from sun and precipitation through seasons and decades, deserves acknowledgement of its service, not abandonment in a corner to gather dust. The Kasa Obaki embodies this principle, the eye umbrella literally coming to life to remind humans that objects merit consideration, that the old should not be thoughtlessly replaced with the new simply because replacement is possible. The creature's comical appearance, a single eye, a lolling tongue, hopping on one leg through rain, makes it more sympathetic than frightening, a figure that evokes amusement along with mild apprehension. The Kasa Obake appears in various forms across Japanese folklore and popular culture, sometimes depicted as purely playful, other times as genuinely unsettling despite its absurd appearance. The image of an animated umbrella hopping through rainy darkness captures something essential about Japanese folklore's approach to the supernatural. Even humble objects possess potential for transformation. Even the discarded and forgotten can manifest unexpected vitality. Even the mundane contains seeds of the marvelous. The Kasa Obaki reminds that the world is fuller, stranger, more alive than ordinary perception suggests. that consciousness might dwell in unexpected places, that proper respect should extend not just to living things but to the tools and objects that serve human needs. In the rain-soaked nights of Japan, where umbrellas remain essential equipment for navigating weather that can turn wet without warning, the old stories persist. Treat your umbrella well. Don't discard it carelessly, lest 100 years from now it returns to remind you of your neglect. In the Philippines, where Spanish colonial influence blended with indigenous traditions to create unique folklore, the aswang exists as perhaps the most feared creature in the archipelago's supernatural bestiary. The term aswang actually encompasses several different types of monsters, rather than describing a single creature, all sharing certain characteristics: shape-shifting ability, preference for human flesh or blood, nocturnal activity, and vulnerability to specific protections. The most common aswang appears as an ordinary person during daylight hours, often a beautiful woman, completely indistinguishable from normal humans. At night, however, the transformation occurs, the aswang's tongue extending to incredible length, becoming a thin proboscis capable of piercing through bamboo walls and thatched roofs to reach victims sleeping inside. This tongue can drain blood or extract internal organs, particularly targeting pregnant women to consume the developing fetus, a detail that made the aswang especially terrifying in rural communities where infant mortality already claimed too many lives through natural causes. The aswang possesses the ability to transform into various animal forms, most commonly large black dogs, pigs, or bats, using these shapes to move unseen through villages or to approach homes without arousing suspicion. In human form, the aswang can be identified through several telltale signs. Their reflection appears upside down in water or mirrors. Their eyes have a particular gleam that catches light strangely. They avoid making eye contact, and most distinctively, their appearance changes when observed from a specific angle, revealing their true monstrous nature if viewed from between the legs while bending over. The aswang's presence can be detected through the tick-tick-tick sound they make while hunting, a clicking that grows louder as they move away from their target and softer as they approach, deliberately misleading potential victims about their actual location. Certain protections ward off aswang: garlic, holy water, salt, specific prayers, daggers or swords blessed by priests, and stingray tails hung near doorways or windows. The aswang legend serves multiple cultural functions in Filipino society, explaining stillbirths and miscarriages before modern medical understanding, providing cautionary tales that kept children close to home after dark, creating community bonds through shared belief and mutual protection against common threat. Different regions of the Philippines emphasize different aspects of aswang lore, some focusing on the vampiric blood-drinking version, others on the viscera-consuming type, still others on the ability to divide their body at the waist like the manananggal, a specific type of aswang. The creature remains deeply embedded in Filipino culture, appearing in modern movies, television shows, and literature, evolving to address contemporary fears while maintaining core traditional elements. In rural barrios, where electricity remains inconsistent and darkness still holds sway for significant hours, where traditional beliefs persist alongside Catholic faith, the aswang continues to inspire genuine fear and careful observance of protective rituals. The manananggal represents a specific and particularly disturbing variant of the aswang, distinguished by its unique hunting method. This creature appears as a beautiful woman during the day, but at night she anoints her body with special oil that enables transformation. Her torso then separates from her lower body at the waist, growing bat-like wings that allow the upper half to fly through darkness while the legs remain hidden wherever she left them. The Manananggal uses her long, thread-like tongue to pierce through roofs and walls, seeking pregnant women to feed upon the blood of unborn children, or sometimes targeting other sleeping victims. The creature's name comes from the Tagalog word tanggal, meaning to remove or to separate, perfectly describing her most distinctive characteristic. The severed lower half remains completely vulnerable while the torso hunts. If someone discovers the legs and sprinkles them with salt, garlic, or ash, the upper body cannot rejoin, and when dawn approaches, the Manananggal will die, unable to reunite her body before sunlight destroys her. The Manananggal's appearance while hunting presents a horrifying sight. A woman's torso with entrails dangling from where the lower body should connect, huge, leathery wings beating the air, red eyes glowing with hunger, that impossibly long tongue extending and retracting as she searches for prey. She produces a distinctive sound while flying, described as a soft flapping combined with a wet, slithering noise from the trailing organs. Communities protect pregnant women by having them sleep in rooms surrounded by garlic, blessed salt, and religious imagery, sometimes organizing watches where men stay awake through the night, armed with swords and bamboo torches, ready to defend against the creature's approach. If a Manananggal's lower half is discovered and destroyed, the creature often dies shrieking and cursing, sometimes revealing her human identity in the process, leading to discovery that she was someone from the village all along, living a double life that combined normal daylight existence with nocturnal predation. The Manananggal legend speaks to anxieties about pregnancy and childbirth in contexts where maternal and infant mortality remained tragically high, where the loss of mother or child during pregnancy or delivery occurred with devastating frequency. Giving this danger a supernatural face provided some psychological mechanism for processing grief and fear, transforming incomprehensible medical tragedies into battles against identifiable enemies that might be fought with specific weapons and protections. The image of the separated body also suggests themes of duality, of hidden nature, of the face people show to their community versus their true selves. The beautiful woman who becomes a monster at night, who literally splits herself in two to hunt, embodies fears about trust, about knowing who among neighbors and friends might harbor dark secrets. In the Philippines, where the Manananggal remains one of the most culturally significant monsters, her image continues to evolve while her essential nature persists. The predator who hides in plain sight, the neighbor who transforms when darkness falls, the hunger that can never be satisfied or escaped. Moving north to Thailand, the Phai Krasu floats through the night in a form that shares similarities with the Manananggal, but carries distinctly Southeast Asian characteristics. This creature appears as a beautiful woman's head, trailing her internal organs, heart, lungs, stomach, intestines, glowing with an eerie phosphorescent light that illuminates the darkness as she drifts through the air. The Phai Krasu hunts for food contaminated with blood or filth, particularly targeting afterbirth, feces, or rotting meat, though some versions describe her attacking living animals or people to feed on their blood or flesh. She appears most often in rural areas, floating above rice paddies and between houses, her glowing organs creating lights that farmers might mistake for lanterns or spirits. The creature's origins vary by telling. Some say she arises from women who practiced black magic and were cursed. Others claim she represents punishment for specific sins like adultery or greed. Still others suggest she is created when a woman dies during childbirth or while pregnant, her spirit unable to rest. The Fai Krasui possesses a physical body that remains hidden while she hunts, her head and organs detaching to seek food during the night and returning before dawn to reunite with the torso and legs. Like the Manananggal, if someone discovers and destroys or hides the body, the Fai Krasu cannot reunite and will die when sunlight arrives. The creature is vulnerable to thorny branches and plants. Surrounding a house with thorny vegetation can prevent her approach, as the trailing organs become entangled and torn. The Fai Krasu fears being seen by her community in her true form, maintaining a normal human appearance during the day, living among ordinary people while harboring her monstrous nature. If exposed, she may flee the village, or, in some versions, lose her power and become fully human again, freed from the curse. Those who encounter the Fai Krasu describe the horror of seeing a woman's head floating toward them with organs streaming behind like a grotesque tail, glowing faintly green or red, the face sometimes beautiful, sometimes twisted with hunger or rage. The Fai Krasue appears throughout Southeast Asian folklore with regional variations. In Cambodia, she is known as A Hop. In Laos as Fai Kasu. In Malaysia as Penanggalan. Each version maintaining core elements while adapting details to local culture and language. The creature serves as warning about various transgressions, about the dangers of ambition or desire that leads to dark practices, about the importance of proper ritual purity and cleanliness. The Fai Krasu's attraction to filth and contaminated food reflects the concerns about hygiene and disease in tropical climates where improper handling of waste and food can lead to serious illness. Her glowing organs floating through darkness provide explanation for mysterious lights seen in rural areas, will-o'-wisps and other luminous phenomena that occur in marshes and rice paddies. In Thailand's rural northeast, where traditional beliefs remain strong despite modernization, farmers still tell stories of the Fai Krasu, still surround their homes with thorny plants, still caution their children about staying indoors after dark when the floating head might drift past, searching for the sustenance her cursed existence demands. Indonesia's archipelago harbors its own version of this floating head monster in the form of the kuntilanak, also known as Pontianak in Malaysia. This creature represents the spirit of a woman who died during pregnancy or childbirth, her anguish and tragedy transforming her into a vengeful ghost. The kuntilanak appears as a beautiful woman with pale skin, wearing a white dress, her long black hair often concealing her face until the crucial moment when she reveals the hole in her back where an infant might have rested, or turns to show a face twisted by death and rage. She haunts banana trees and plumeria trees, areas near graveyards, and places where tragic deaths occurred. The kuntilanak announces her presence with the crying of a baby, a sound that lures the compassionate closer, drawing them toward what seems like an infant in distress. As one approaches, however, the crying grows more distant, and when it seems far away, the kuntilanak actually stands very close, ready to attack. The kuntilanak preys primarily on men, though she also targets pregnant women out of jealousy for the life they carry, the possibility they possess that she lost. She can be repelled by driving a nail into the hole in her back, an act that transforms her into a beautiful, docile woman for as long as the nail remains in place. Some stories tell of men who captured kuntilanak in this way and married them, living happily until the nail was discovered and removed, at which point the woman reverted to her monstrous form and either fled or attacked her erstwhile husband. The kuntilanak inflicts harm through her long fingernails, capable of disemboweling victims with a single swipe, or through her presence alone, which can drive people mad with terror. Pregnant women protect themselves by placing scissors under their pillows, keeping lights burning through the night, and avoiding going out after dark, particularly to areas where kuntilanak are known to dwell. The kuntilanak embodies the tragedy of maternal mortality, of lives cut short before motherhood could be experienced, of potential unfulfilled and futures denied. In regions where childbirth remained extremely dangerous, where medical care proved inadequate or absent, where women faced pregnancy and delivery with justified fear for their own survival, the kuntilanak gave form to those fears and memorialized those who died. The creature's targeting of pregnant women and men speaks to the complex emotions surrounding pregnancy in dangerous circumstances. Jealousy of those who survive what you didn't, rage at a world that takes mothers from their unborn children, desire for the connection and completion that death prevented. The crying baby sound that announces the kuntilanak represents the child that never was, the life that ended before it could truly begin. In Indonesia and Malaysia, where the kuntilanak remains a powerful cultural presence, her white-clad form serves as reminder of obstetric tragedies, both past and present, of the women lost to complications that modern medicine might prevent, but that still claim lives in areas where healthcare remains inadequate. The crying that sounds far when she is near warns that grief and loss can appear distant, historical, belonging to other people in other times, until suddenly they stand beside us, immediate and inescapable. Shifting west to Russia and the broader Slavic world, a figure both terrifying and strangely fascinating dominates the folklore. Baba Yaga, the witch who dwells in a hut that stands on chicken legs. This ancient crone appears in countless stories, sometimes as pure villain seeking to devour children, sometimes as ambiguous helper who aids heroes who approach her with proper respect and clever answers. Baba Yaga's appearance inspires horror. She is ancient beyond measure, her nose grown so long it brushes the ceiling when she lies on her sleeping bench, her teeth made of iron, her fingers like claws, her body skeletal thin or grotesquely distorted. She flies through the air in a giant mortar, rowing with a pestle, sweeping away her tracks with a broom made of birch. Her hut stands in the deepest forest, surrounded by a fence made of bones, topped with skulls whose eyes glow at night, providing the only light in the darkness. The hut itself rotates on its chicken legs, sometimes presenting a blank wall to visitors, requiring them to speak the proper phrase. Turn your back to the forest, your front to me, before the door becomes accessible. Baba Yaga serves as gatekeeper between the mortal world and the realm of death, dwelling in the boundary between civilization and wilderness, between the known and the unknown. Those who seek her must pass tests of courage and cleverness, must demonstrate proper respect through specific words and actions, must understand that she operates by rules different from ordinary society. Heroes who approach Baba Yaga for aid must typically perform tasks for her, cleaning her hut, feeding her animals, answering riddles, completing impossible assignments. Those who succeed receive powerful magical items or crucial information that allows them to continue their quests. Those who fail become her next meal, their bones joining the fence around her domain. Baba Yaga possesses vast knowledge about the magical world, commanding spirits and creatures, knowing the location of hidden objects, and the solutions to seemingly impossible problems. She serves neither good nor evil exclusively, but maintains the balance, punishing the rude and foolish while rewarding the clever and respectful. The image of Baba Yaga contains layers of meaning accumulated over centuries of storytelling. She represents the archetype of the crone, the wise woman whose power comes from age and knowledge rather than youth and beauty. She embodies the forest itself, wild and dangerous, but also providing for those who understand its ways. She serves as the final test before transformation, the threshold guardian who ensures only the worthy proceed to whatever lies beyond. The chicken-legged hut suggests ancient Slavic burial practices where structures were built on stilts, connecting Baba Yaga to death and the ancestors, positioning her as psychopomp who guides souls between worlds. In Russian fairy tales, Baba Yaga remains essential, her presence marking the story as one where real transformation might occur, where the hero must face genuine danger and demonstrate authentic courage or cleverness. She cannot be defeated through force, only negotiated with through proper protocol and respect. In the deep forests of Russia and Eastern Europe, where old ways persist beneath modern life, Baba Yaga's hut supposedly still stands, still rotates on its chicken legs, still waits for travelers brave or desperate enough to seek the witch's aid, knowing they might receive either their heart's desire or become the next set of bones decorating her fence. The rivers and lakes of Slavic lands harbor the rusalka, spirits of women who died by drowning, particularly those who took their own lives or were murdered and disposed of in water. These beings appear as beautiful young women with pale skin and long hair that might be green like weeds, or simply wet and clinging, wearing white shifts or nothing at all. Rusalki emerge from the water during certain times of year, particularly during Rusalka week in early summer, to dance in meadows and forests near their watery homes, singing songs that enchant all who hear them. Men who encounter Rusalki often find themselves drawn into the water, whether through enchantment, seduction, or force, joining the Rusalka in her underwater realm either as companion or as victim, depending on the version of the story and the Rusalka's mood. Some tales present Rusalki as purely malevolent spirits seeking to drown the living out of jealousy or revenge. Others show them as more complex beings capable of falling in love with mortals, of helping those who show them kindness, of acting according to how they are treated. Rusalki possess particular associations with women who died violently or tragically, especially those who took their own lives due to being abandoned by lovers or dishonored by men who refused to marry them. The Rusalka represents unfulfilled desires, broken promises, the tragedy of women who saw death as preferable to the shame or hardship they faced in life. In death, they gain a form of power they lacked while living, able to lure and destroy the men who might have treated them poorly, able to move freely in ways denied to them when social constraints and expectations limited their choices. The Rusalka's beauty serves as weapon and trap, drawing victims close enough for the water to claim them. Her singing carries supernatural power, making listeners forget danger, forget responsibilities, forget everything except the desire to join her. During Rusalka week, communities would avoid rivers and lakes, knowing the spirits walked on land during this period, more dangerous than ever in their proximity to the living world. Protection against Rusalki involved various charms and behaviors, making the sign of the cross, carrying wormwood, avoiding areas near water during dangerous times, never swimming alone or at night. Men who survived encounters with Rusalki often emerged changed, haunted by the experience, unable to forget the beauty and terror they witnessed. Women might become rusalki themselves if they died in water, a fate communities tried to prevent through proper burial rites and care for those who showed signs of despair or desperation. The rusalka embodies water's dual nature, beautiful and life-giving but also dangerous and capable of drowning, reflecting and revealing but also concealing depths that might hide anything. In Slavic folklore, the rusalka represents the consequences of treating women poorly, of breaking promises, of valuing honor and reputation over human life and connection. She is the ghost of what might have been, of the life denied, of beauty that turned to tragedy, now transformed into something that lures others toward the same fate she suffered. In the quiet pools of rivers, in the deep lakes where sunlight barely penetrates, the rusalki supposedly dance still, singing their eternal songs, waiting for those who will come close enough to hear. Romania's folklore introduces the strigoi, a type of troubled spirit or undead creature that bears some similarity to the vampire of popular culture, but maintains distinctly Romanian characteristics. The strigoi can be either living or dead. A living strigoi possesses supernatural powers while appearing as an ordinary person, often someone born with certain telltale signs like a caul over their face, or a tail, or extra hair. After death, such a person becomes a dead strigoi, rising from the grave to drain the life force of the living. The dead strigoi appears much like it did in life but shows signs of its undead nature. Red face suggesting recently consumed blood, 1 foot in the grave and 1 foot out, an elongated shadow, bloating, and lack of decomposition when the grave is opened for investigation. The strigoi attacks family members first, then moves on to neighbors and livestock, draining blood or life energy, spreading disease, causing general misfortune and death to the community. The strigoi differs from the romanticized vampire of fiction. It appears more corpse-like than seductive, acts from hunger and malevolence rather than sophisticated evil, and can be destroyed through methods more brutal than a simple stake through the heart. Destroying a strigoi might require exhuming the body, driving stakes through the heart, decapitating it, placing garlic in the mouth, removing the heart and burning it, or even more elaborate rituals depending on regional tradition. The creature can transform into animals, particularly black cats or dogs, becoming mist, or taking on grotesque forms that reveal its unnatural state. Unlike the fictional vampire, the strigoi doesn't create others of its kind through biting, but arises from specific circumstances of birth or death. Dying unbaptized, committing suicide, being a 7th child of the same sex in a family, dying violently or under a curse, having a cat jump over the corpse before burial. The strigoi represents profound anxieties about death, about the boundary between living and dead, about the possibility that the dead might not rest peacefully but return to harm the living. In Romanian villages where belief in strigoi remained strong, deaths that occurred in clusters, wasting diseases that consumed families, unexplained illnesses in livestock, all might be attributed to strigoi activity, leading to exhumations and rituals meant to put the dead properly to rest. The strigoi legend served to enforce proper treatment of corpses, proper burial rites, proper Christian practice. It provided explanation for diseases like tuberculosis that seemed to pass from person to person within families, appearing to drain life gradually. The image of the undead family member returning to feed on their own relatives speaks to the way illness and death could tear through households. The way watching loved ones die seemed like being slowly drained of life oneself. In Romania and surrounding regions, where Bram Stoker drew inspiration for his fictional Dracula, the authentic Strigoi tradition predates and differs significantly from literary vampires, maintaining its own character rooted in folk belief, practical concerns about disease and death, and the eternal human fear that those we bury might not stay buried. Poland's folklore speaks of the Strzyga, a being born as a twin soul inhabiting a single body, possessing 2 hearts, 2 souls, and 2 sets of teeth. When a Strzyga dies, one soul departs, but the other remains, animating the corpse for evil purposes. These creatures rise from their graves at night to attack the living, drinking blood and spreading disease throughout their former communities. The Strzyga can be identified at birth by the presence of 2 sets of teeth, or being born with teeth already present, signs that mark the child as potentially dangerous. If such a child dies, precautions must be taken during burial. The body might be laid face down, so if it tries to rise it will dig deeper into the earth rather than toward the surface, or heavy stones placed on the grave, or the head separated from the body to prevent animation. The Strzyga appears more animalistic than human when it rises, crawling rather than walking, attacking with bestial fury rather than cunning, driven by pure hunger rather than intelligence. The Strzyga legend reflects deep-seated fears about twins and unusual births, times when medical understanding couldn't explain why some children were born different from others. The concept of twin souls suggests internal division, a person not fully unified, split between competing natures. When death releases one soul, the remaining soul, unchecked by its counterpart, becomes purely malevolent, all the darkness that balance previously contained. Communities that believed in Strzyga watched carefully for the warning signs, marking those at risk, preparing to take preventive measures if such a person died. The creature represents the fear that death might not bring peace, that some individuals carry within them seeds of monstrosity that only death fully reveals. The bestial nature of the risen Strzyga, its animalistic attack patterns suggests complete loss of humanity, the reduction of a person to pure predatory hunger without conscience or connection to their former life and relationships. The traditions surrounding Strzyga burial demonstrate the elaborate precautions communities developed to protect themselves from feared supernatural threats. The methods: face-down burial, decapitation, staking, binding the body, all prevented the corpse from rising, or ensured it couldn't harm the living if it did animate. These practices, disturbing from modern perspective, represented genuine attempts to address what people understood as real dangers requiring real solutions. The Strzyga, like many Eastern European undead creatures, served as explanation for epidemics, for the way disease seemed to spread from corpses to the living, for deaths that occurred in clusters or patterns. In Poland's folk memory, the Strzyga maintains its place as warning about the dangers that might arise from unusual births, about the importance of proper burial practice, about the thin line between the living and the dead that must be maintained through ritual and vigilance. In the ancient traditions of Ireland and Scotland, the banshee serves as herald of death, a female spirit whose appearance or keening announces that someone in certain old families will soon pass from this world. The banshee appears in various forms depending on the family she serves, sometimes as a beautiful young woman with long red or golden hair, sometimes as a matronly figure, sometimes as an ancient crone with tangled white hair and red eyes from endless weeping. She wears either white or gray garments, sometimes a green dress, occasionally a shroud. The banshee doesn't cause death but merely foretells it, her presence serving as warning that allows family members to prepare, to gather, to say farewells while time remains. Her cry, the keening that gives her the name Bean Seed or Woman of the Fairy Mound, carries across valleys and through walls, a sound of such profound grief that all who hear it feel sorrow in their bones, an ache that transcends personal experience to touch something universal about loss and mortality. The banshee attaches herself to specific Irish families, particularly those with surnames beginning with O or Mac, the ancient Gaelic bloodlines. Each family has its own banshee, a connection that supposedly stretches back centuries to when the family first settled in Ireland. The banshee's keening might be heard at the moment of death or sometimes days before, giving families time to prepare. She appears near the home of the person who will die, or at places significant to the family, ancient ruins where ancestors lived, graveyards where generations rest, crossroads where family history intersected with larger events. Some describe seeing the banshee washing burial shrouds or grave clothes in rivers, a figure bent over the water scrubbing fabric that appears stained with blood, her washing presaging death just as surely as her keening. In some accounts, multiple banshees gather and wail together when a person of great importance or exceptional holiness is about to die, their combined voices creating a sound of overwhelming sorrow that carries for miles. The banshee represents the Irish cultural relationship with death, the understanding that mortality remains always present, that grief is something to be acknowledged and honored rather than hidden. The tradition of keening at funerals, where women would wail and cry out the names and deeds of the deceased, connects to the banshee's supernatural keening, both serving to mark the magnitude of loss, to give voice to sorrow that might otherwise remain unspoken. The banshee cannot be avoided or appeased. She comes when death comes, her appearance as inevitable as mortality itself. Yet her presence offers a kind of grace, the warning that allows preparation, the acknowledgement that this death matters enough for the spirit world to take notice, to send its messenger to mark the passing. In Ireland and Scotland, families that claim banshee connections treat the tradition with a mixture of pride and dread, honored to have such ancient, supernatural attention while understanding that hearing the banshee means loss approaches. In the wind that moves through Irish hills, in sounds that might be women weeping in the distance, in the moments when grief seems to precede loss rather than follow it, the banshee maintains her watch, announcing departures, honoring the dead before they've even passed, providing the terrible gift of foreknowledge that death approaches on silent feet. The waterways of Scotland harbor the Kelpie, a shape-shifting spirit that most commonly appears as a beautiful horse standing near rivers or lochs, its coat sleek and inviting, its demeanor calm and approachable. The Kelpie lures travelers onto its back, particularly children or young adults who see the horse as an opportunity for a ride or who attempt to capture what seems like a valuable stray animal. Once the victim mounts or even touches the Kelpie, they become stuck to its hide as if glued, unable to dismount or pull away. The Kelpie then plunges into the water, diving to the depths, drowning the rider before consuming their flesh, leaving only the entrails to float to the surface. The Kelpie can take human form as well, appearing as a handsome man or beautiful woman, always with water weeds tangled in their hair, always staying close to water sources. In human form, the Kelpie might court unsuspecting victims, luring them into relationships before revealing their true nature and dragging them into the depths. The Kelpie can be distinguished from an ordinary horse by its mane, which constantly drips with water even on dry days, and by its hoof prints, which appear backward, pointing in the opposite direction from the way the creature actually traveled. The Kelpie possesses tremendous strength in water, able to create dangerous currents and whirlpools, capable of drowning multiple victims simultaneously if several people touch it at once. Tales tell of groups of children all placing hands on what seemed a friendly horse, all becoming trapped, all dragged to their deaths together. The only way to gain power over a Kelpie involves placing a bridle blessed by a priest over its head, which forces it to serve the person who bridled it, working with the strength of 10 horses, never tiring, capable of pulling impossible loads. However, keeping a Kelpie bridled requires constant vigilance. If the bridle is ever removed, the creature immediately kills its captor and anyone nearby before returning to the water. The Kelpie legend served crucial practical purposes in Scottish Highland culture, warning children and adults alike about the dangers of rivers and lochs, waters that could be deceptively calm on the surface while harboring dangerous currents below, waters cold enough to bring hypothermia within minutes, waters that could rise suddenly after rain and sweep away those caught unaware. The image of the beautiful horse that becomes a death trap captures the way water's appearance can deceive, how what seems inviting and harmless can transform into lethal danger once committed to. The Kelpie represents not just water's physical dangers, but its liminal nature, the way it serves as boundary between land and whatever lies beneath, between the familiar and the unknown, between life and death. In Scottish lochs, particularly the deeper ones where visibility drops away quickly and the bottom lies far below, where stories of mysterious creatures persist into modern times, the Kelpie maintains its place in cultural imagination, a reminder that beautiful surfaces might conceal predatory depths, that not every friendly appearance should be trusted, that water demands respect and caution regardless of how inviting it might seem. Ireland's folklore also speaks of the Dullahan, a headless horseman who serves as one of the most terrifying figures in Celtic mythology. This creature appears as a man or sometimes a woman sitting atop a black horse, head completely severed from the body but carried under one arm or held high in one hand. The head appears alive, capable of seeing vast distances in the darkness, its eyes constantly moving, scanning the landscape for its next target. The head's mouth remains frozen in a hideous grin, or alternatively hangs open in a perpetual scream, the tongue black and rotten. The Dullahan rides a black horse, or drives a coach called the Cois de Bodhar, the silent coach made from materials taken from graveyards, coffin wood for the structure, candles burning with blue flame providing illumination, reins made from human spines. When the Dullahan stops riding, someone dies. Its presence at a location announces that death has come for a soul, inevitable and inescapable. The Dullahan carries a whip made from a human spine, using it to drive the horse or to lash out the eyes of those foolish enough to watch it pass. Looking directly at the Dullahan brings consequences, loss of sight permanently, or death itself if the creature speaks your name. When the Dullahan calls out a person's name, that person immediately dies, their soul claimed regardless of age, health, or circumstance. The creature cannot be stopped or turned aside by any barrier. Gates open of their own accord when it approaches. Locks fall open. Walls present no obstacle. The only material that repels the Dullahan is gold. Showing gold to the creature causes it to flee in terror, vanishing into the night without claiming the soul it came for. This vulnerability to gold explains why Irish people traditionally carried gold coins or wore gold jewelry. Not for wealth, but for protection against this particular supernatural threat. The Dullahan serves as a type of fairy creature, a messenger of death sent by higher powers, fulfilling a role similar to the Grim Reaper in other cultural traditions, but maintaining distinctly Irish characteristics. The Dullahan represents death's inevitability and its indifference to human concerns, arriving on its own schedule, taking whom it will without regard for age, virtue, or readiness. The headless nature of the creature suggests death's blindness, how it claims people seemingly at random, without eyes to see the lives it interrupts, the potential it cuts short. Yet the head carried under the arm sees everything, knows whom it comes for, fulfilling death's role as something that, though it seems random, operates according to rules and purposes beyond human comprehension. The silent coach, moving without sound despite its wheels and hooves, represents how death approaches quietly, how quickly life can transition to its end without warning or announcement. In rural Ireland, the sound of hoofbeats in the night when no horse should be traveling, the appearance of strange lights, the sudden sense of dread without obvious cause, all these might be attributed to the Dullahan passing on its rounds, claiming souls, marking the end of stories, performing death's necessary work that allows the cycle of life to continue. In the regions of France and broader continental Europe, the dames blanches appear as female spirits dressed in flowing white garments, inhabiting bridges, ravines, and narrow passes where travelers must approach them. These white ladies exhibit behavior that ranges from benign to deadly, depending on the specific tradition and how travelers respond to their presence. Some dames blanches simply ask travelers to dance with them, and those who agree and dance well are allowed to pass unharmed. Refusing the invitation, or dancing poorly, results in being thrown from the bridge or pushed into the ravine, death coming as punishment for discourtesy or insufficient grace. Other versions of dames blanches behave more aggressively, leaping onto passing carriages or attacking travelers directly, particularly targeting men traveling alone at night. These spirits arise from women who died violently or tragically, often through betrayal by men they loved and trusted, their white garments representing either wedding dresses that were never worn or burial shrouds. The dames blanches serve as guardians of the spaces they inhabit, testing those who pass through, judging whether travelers demonstrate proper respect, courage, or skill. Some traditions hold that showing no fear allows safe passage, while others insist that certain words must be spoken or specific rituals performed. The spirits might appear beautiful or horrifying depending on the account and the observer, sometimes gradually revealing their true frightening appearance as travelers draw closer. The dames blanches connect to broader European traditions of white ladies or women in white, ghostly female figures that haunt specific locations, appearing to warn of danger or to seek revenge on the living. The white clothing symbolizes their liminal state, existing between life and death, between the physical and spiritual worlds, between past and present. They embody memory that refuses to fade, grief that transforms into haunting, the way places can hold impressions of terrible events that occurred within them. The tradition of dames blanches served practical purposes beyond supernatural storytelling, warning about dangerous geographical features like unstable bridges or treacherous ravines, encouraging travelers to remain cautious in areas where accidents commonly occurred, providing explanation for disappearances that happened when people traveled alone through dangerous territory. The requirement to dance with the spirits speaks to the importance of grace, courtesy, and proper behavior in French cultural tradition. The understanding that social skills might prove as essential as physical strength. The spirits' particular hostility toward men reflects the very real dangers women faced from male violence, inverted into a tale where female spirits exact revenge on male travelers, where for once women hold power over men rather than the reverse. In the mists that gather over French bridges, in the white shapes that seem to move in peripheral vision, in the narrow passes where wind sounds almost like voices calling, the dames blanches supposedly linger still, waiting for the next traveler to test, the next man to judge, the next opportunity to dance or to destroy. In West African traditions, particularly among the Ewe people of Ghana and Togo, the adze exists as a vampiric spirit that can take the form of a firefly or other small luminous insect, making it nearly impossible to catch or kill. In its insect form, the adze can pass through any barrier, enter any home, approach any sleeping victim to drain their blood, particularly targeting children and young people whose life force proves most vital and nourishing. Those who possess adze spirits, witches who can transform into this form, appear as ordinary people during the day, respected members of their communities, but at night they transform and fly out to feed. If an adze is caught while in insect form, it transforms back into human shape, revealing the witch's identity. The adze can also possess people, taking control of their bodies, making them speak in strange voices, causing illness that defies normal treatment. Communities afflicted by adze attack show signs of wasting diseases, children growing weak and pale, families suffering unexplained illnesses that pass from person to person. The adze represents a specifically African understanding of witchcraft, where supernatural powers arise from spiritual bargains or inherited abilities, where those with power might use it for communal benefit or personal gain at others' expense. The firefly form connects to the mysterious lights that appear in African nights, small moving luminescences that could be ordinary insects or could be something far more dangerous. The adze's preference for children speaks to the terrible reality of child mortality in regions where disease, malnutrition, and inadequate medical care claim young lives with tragic frequency. Giving these losses a supernatural explanation provides some framework for understanding incomprehensible grief, allows communities to take action through rituals and protections rather than feeling helpless against invisible medical threats. Those accused of being adze faced serious consequences, sometimes exile or death, reflecting the very real fear communities felt when children sickened without clear cause, when families lost multiple members in succession, when explanations based on contagion or environmental factors proved insufficient to explain the pattern of illness and death. The adze tradition continues in various forms throughout West Africa and in African diaspora communities, adapting to new contexts while maintaining core elements: the shape-shifting ability, the vampiric feeding, the targeting of the vulnerable, the difficulty of detection and defense. Protection against adze involves various spiritual practices, charms, and rituals specific to different communities and traditions, often requiring consultation with traditional healers or spiritual practitioners who possess knowledge passed down through generations. The odds serves as a reminder that supernatural threats in African traditions often take forms connected to the natural world, utilizing animals, insects, and natural phenomena rather than appearing as obviously monstrous humanoid creatures. This integration of supernatural threat with natural forms makes the spirit world feel immediately present, suggests that any creature encountered might harbor spiritual dimension beyond its physical appearance, maintains the understanding that the world contains layers of reality beyond what ordinary perception reveals. The Arabian and Islamic traditions speak of the jinn, beings created by Allah from smokeless fire, existing parallel to humanity but possessing abilities and nature fundamentally different from human or angel. The jinn represent an entire species rather than individual monsters, including many varieties and types, from the powerful marid to the dangerous ifrit to the mischievous ghoul. These beings possess free will like humans, can choose to follow righteous paths or turn to evil, can be Muslim or practice other beliefs, can help humans or cause them tremendous harm depending on circumstance and the individual jinn's character. The jinn can shapeshift, taking forms ranging from beautiful humans to terrifying monsters to columns of smoke or fire, can fly, possess supernatural strength, live for centuries or millennia, and exist partially in dimensions invisible to ordinary human perception. They inhabit ruins, deserts, and lonely places, dwelling in a world that overlaps with but remains distinct from the human world, appearing when invoked or when accidentally disturbed by human activity in their territories. The jinn demonstrate the full range of moral possibility. Some serve as righteous beings who worship properly and treat humans justly. Others pursue evil ends, tormenting humans for amusement or darker purposes. Still, others simply try to live their own lives and become dangerous only when bothered or disrespected. Tales from the Arabian Nights feature jinn bound in lamps or bottles, forced to serve masters who free them, but these represent captured beings rather than the natural state of jinn existence. The powerful marid dwelling in vast bodies of water, the ifrit burning with fire and rage, the ghoul haunting graveyards and deserts. All these represent different jinn types with distinct characteristics and behaviors. Humans who encounter jinn must demonstrate respect, proper knowledge of religious protections, and careful speech. Jinn can be bargained with but prove extremely literal in interpreting agreements, finding loopholes in carelessly worded contracts, granting wishes in ways that technically fulfill requests while bringing disaster to the wisher. The jinn represent Islamic understanding of the unseen world, the recognition that humanity shares creation with other intelligent beings, that the spiritual realm operates according to rules and structures as complex as the physical world. The jinn's creation from smokeless fire represents something elemental yet intangible, powerful yet not solid, capable of transformation yet maintaining essential nature. Protection against malicious jinn involves religious recitations, specific verses from the Quran, proper prayer and spiritual practice, maintaining state of ritual purity. The tradition of jinn extends throughout the Islamic world and beyond, appearing in stories from Morocco to Indonesia, from Turkey to Malaysia, adapted to local contexts while maintaining core Islamic theological framework. The jinn serve as reminder that the world contains more than what eyes can see. that intelligence and power take forms beyond human understanding, that respect for the unseen world proves as important as navigation of physical reality. In the desert winds, in the flames of fires, in the ruins of ancient places, the jinn supposedly continue their existence, sometimes intersecting with human lives, sometimes remaining completely separate, always present in the cosmology even when invisible to human perception. New Zealand's Maori traditions speak of the taniwha, powerful beings that serve as guardians of waterways, dwelling in rivers, lakes, estuaries, and coastal waters. The taniwha appear in varying forms depending on the specific being and tribal tradition. Some resemble enormous reptiles or dragons, others look like giant sharks or whales. Still others take forms that combine multiple creatures or defy simple description. Each taniwha possesses its own personality, history, and relationship with the local people. Some serving as fierce protectors of tribes and territories, others acting as dangerous predators that must be carefully appeased or avoided. The taniwha hold authority over their waters, controlling the fish and other resources, allowing safe passage to those who respect proper protocol and attacking those who show disrespect or violate tapu, the sacred restrictions that govern proper behavior in Maori culture. The taniwha often connect to specific families or tribes as ancestors or guardians, their presence explaining geographical features like dangerous currents, whirlpools, or areas where people mysteriously drown. Offerings must be made when traveling through taniwha territory, acknowledgement given, permission requested. The taniwha teach lessons about relationship with the natural world, about respecting water's power, about understanding that places possess spiritual dimensions requiring proper acknowledgement. Some taniwha stories tell of these beings helping lost travelers, rescuing drowning people, guiding canoes through dangerous passages, the guardian aspect of their nature protecting those who maintain right relationship with the land and water. Other tales emphasize their dangerous nature, how they punish violations of tapu, how they defend their territories against intrusion, how they must be understood and respected rather than challenged or ignored. The taniwha tradition remains actively important in contemporary Aotearoa New Zealand, informing decisions about development projects, environmental protections, and water management. When Maori communities cite taniwha presence as reason to protect specific waterways or alter construction plans, they assert both spiritual reality and practical ecological wisdom. Areas where taniwha dwell often correspond to locations of genuine environmental sensitivity, places where development would damage ecosystems or create hazards. The taniwha represent indigenous understanding that nature possesses agency, that the land and water cannot be treated as mere resources to exploit without consequence, that proper relationship with place requires acknowledging dimensions of reality beyond what Western scientific frameworks typically recognize. The taniwha serve as guardians not just in supernatural sense, but as conceptual frameworks that protect natural systems from thoughtless development, that maintain cultural connections to ancestral lands and waters, that keep alive indigenous ways of understanding and relating to the environment. In the waters of Polynesian islands, particularly Hawaii, the night marchers appear as ghostly processions of ancient warriors, chiefs, and attendants who walk sacred paths during certain nights, carrying torches, beating drums, chanting in ancient voices. These are not individual monsters, but collective spirits of the honored dead, ancestors who continue to march as they did in life, fulfilling eternal duties or traveling between sacred sites. The night marchers appear most often on nights when the moon is dark or when ancient ceremonies occurred, following specific routes that connect historically significant locations. Temples, battlefields, chiefly residences, burial sites. To encounter the night marchers brings terrible danger, as their sacred procession must not be witnessed by those unauthorized to see them. Looking directly at the night marchers results in death unless one has ancestral connection to those marching, or unless one immediately lies flat and shows complete submission, acknowledging that one should not be seeing what unfolds before them. The sound of the night marchers announces their approach. Drums beating, conch shells blowing, voices chanting, torches crackling. Those who hear these sounds must immediately seek shelter, extinguish lights, lie face down, show absolute respect for the spiritual procession passing through. The night marchers represent ancestors who held high rank, whose kapu or sacred status was so strong that even in death they maintain their power and their protocols. To show them disrespect, to fail to properly acknowledge their presence, to assert that the living have priority over the dead's passage, these bring swift supernatural punishment. Some accounts describe the night marchers seeking relatives among the living to join their procession, calling out names, offering opportunities to join the ancestors' eternal march. Those called face a choice. Join the night marchers and become part of the eternal procession, or refuse and remain among the living but marked by the encounter, forever changed by having been seen and called by the ancestral dead. The night marcher tradition maintains deep significance in Hawaiian culture, representing continuity between past and present, between the living and the ancestors, between the physical landscape and its spiritual dimensions. The specific paths the night marchers follow often correspond to ancient trails, to routes that held historical significance, to connections between places of power. Protecting these paths from development or disruption honors both cultural heritage and spiritual reality, maintaining the ancestors' ability to continue their eternal duties. The night marchers serve as reminder that the land remembers, that history persists in present moment, that the ancestors remain actively engaged with the world they once walked in physical form. The requirement to show respect, to acknowledge their superior spiritual status, to remove oneself from their path rather than expecting them to accommodate the living. These teach humility, honor, proper understanding of the relationship between generations and between the physical and spiritual realms. In Hawaii's darkness, on nights when the moon hides and ancient paths seem to pulse with unseen energy, the drums and chants of the night marchers supposedly still echo, ancestors marching through eternity, demanding and deserving the respect that their sacred status requires. From the traditions of India comes the Rakshasa, a type of demon or supernatural being with tremendous power and frequently malevolent intentions toward humanity. The Rakshasa can shapeshift into any form, appearing as beautiful humans to seduce and deceive, as animals to infiltrate communities, as trusted friends to get close to victims. In their true form, Rakshasa appear as grotesque humanoids with distorted features, eyes that glow red, fangs protruding from mouths, clawed hands, sometimes multiple heads or arms, often depicted with reversed hands where palms face outward from the body. These beings possess magical powers, can create illusions that make entire armies or cities appear where nothing exists, can fly, can become invisible, can curse those who offend them. Rakshasa serve various roles in Hindu mythology. Some align with evil gods and demons, Others simply pursue their own predatory existence, consuming human flesh, disrupting religious ceremonies, causing chaos and destruction wherever they dwell. The Rakshasa demonstrate particular hostility toward holy men, religious rituals, and spiritual practice, attempting to disrupt meditation, destroy sacrifices, lead practitioners astray from righteousness. They grow most powerful at night, while daylight weakens their abilities, making them vulnerable to attack by heroes or gods. Rakshasa can be harmed by blessed weapons, by prayers and mantras recited with proper knowledge and faith, by confrontation with genuinely righteous beings whose spiritual power exceeds the demon's corruption. Yet not all Rakshasa prove purely evil. Some stories describe Rakshasa who converted to righteousness, who served gods or protected communities, who overcame their demonic nature through spiritual practice and devotion. The Rakshasa king Ravana, antagonist in the epic Ramayana, demonstrates both the power and complexity of these beings, a demon of tremendous strength and magical ability, yet also learned, devoted to the god Shiva, capable of love and loyalty even while pursuing evil ends. The Rakshasa represent the constant presence of evil and temptation in the world, the understanding that malevolent forces actively work against righteousness and spiritual advancement. They embody the obstacles that spiritual seekers must overcome, the external challenges that test faith and dedication, the way evil disguises itself in attractive forms to lure the unwary toward destruction. The Rakshasa's shape-shifting ability suggests that evil doesn't announce itself clearly, but hides behind beautiful surfaces, trusted faces, appealing offers. Their vulnerability to spiritual practice and righteous action demonstrates that evil, though powerful, can be overcome through dedication to Dharma, through proper religious observance, through cultivation of spiritual strength that exceeds physical or magical power. In Hindu cosmology, the Rakshasa exist as part of the natural order, not aberrations, but rather necessary aspects of reality, forces that create struggle and difficulty, challenges that allow heroes to demonstrate virtue, obstacles that make spiritual achievement meaningful precisely because it requires overcoming genuine threats. In the shadows of Indian temples, in the forests where hermits meditate, in the boundary between civilization and wilderness, the Rakshasa supposedly still dwell, still test those who venture too far from protection, still represent the eternal struggle between Dharma and Adharma, between righteousness and corruption, between the light that humans seek and the darkness that seeks to consume them.